Hello and welcome, anyone who is tuning in. We are live on the first ever PFF Fantasy Podcast IDP show, live show. Should be fun. What can go wrong? Probably a lot, but we'll find out very soon. So, thank you all for tuning in. I see there's already a bunch of questions or comments, a couple questions. So I appreciate you guys reaching out and watching the show live this morning, 10 a.m. I know that's a little bit earlier on for you West Coasters, if there is anybody. So I appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, let's start because you guys were already nice enough to put in some questions and comments. So I'm going to start right away with that stuff before we get into everything else. The Wilsiak, hey John, fellow Canadian here. What's up, brother? Just wanted to say your work each and every year has been so helpful and enjoyable. Keep crushing it. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate the support and thank you for tuning in. Brandino, once again, time for those gold nuggets from Macri. One of the best days per week in the NFL season. That's very kind, very high praise. Thank you, Brandon or Brandino. Can't wait to hear about Emin from the Rams tonight. Yes, we are absolutely going to talk about that, man. 7 people lined up here. We're good to go. Jake Colhagen, the ultimate flatterer, as always. Are we on a farm? Jake, you are too kind, my friend. Thank you, as always. And Jake's got a start sit question. Actually, he's got a couple. So actually, look at this. Oh my God. Yeah, you guys have started off on fire here with the questions and everything. So we're gonna get into them. I'm gonna try to answer start sit questions as they line up with the games that those players are relevant in, unless there is a question like Jake has here where he's listed a few players, right? That's fine. I will try to answer those as I see them. I'm going to try to answer everything. Unless it's an offense question. If you got offense only questions, I'm not gonna lie. I'm probably gonna ignore you. This is for the IDP and non fantasy related questions only. So you could check out Nate's rankings for offense questions. But the great Jake Colhagen, he doesn't need help. Jake knows exactly what he's doing. But he asking for my ranking here of Malachi Moore, Alontae Taylor, Kendall Brooks, who is stepping in at safety for Tennessee, and PJ Locke. So we'll talk about quite a few of these guys today. So I got PJ Locke the highest. Really great matchup. We'll talk about that when we get to Denver. Malachi Moore has been excellent lately. I want to say 26 tackles in 3 games. I think that was in my notes. We'll get to that soon. Then Alontae Taylor, then Kendall Brooks. We'll see what Kendall Brooks is made of here when he steps in for the great Kevin Winston and Xavier Woods. So, and then Jake also asking 6.5 points per sack. Alex Highsmith, Jalen Phillips. I got Alex Highsmith there. Evan Smith got a question. 1.5 points per tackle. Going to start 2. Byron Young, Jalen Phillips, Caden Ellis, Dramian Sure Gives Me Wood, Tatum Bethune, and the Kingleton. 1.5 points per tackle, 8.5 points per sack, 8.5 points per sack. Wow. I'm going to take a shot on Byron Young this week. Just for that upside. You got a nice sack scoring there. So Byron Young, I'll take a shot. I know it's not the best matchup against Seattle because Sam Darnold has been sneaky good. And then taking a shot on we're going to go linebacker for the other spot. I think it's going to be Caden Ellis for me if I have to remember my rankings because of the matchup. So Caden Ellis probably the best. Yeah, it looks. I typed in Kingleton instead of Singleton. See, that's what I do. I can't think of him as Singleton, but yeah, Caden Ellis as the other one. Few other people here. Yes, let's go live time PFF IDP. Toronto Sharks. My gosh, Bradley, welcome. It's good, sir. We are facing each other this week, so good luck to Brad. Cody Barton is good. Cody Barton is mid. Here we go. Let's go playoff time. Hell yeah, guys. Buenos dias. Glad to be here. Yes, sir, my friend. Let's go Wallbang. Verse better show up tonight. Yeah, absolutely. Jared Verse, hasn't been as amazing as we had hoped this season, but no Charles Cross tonight. We'll get into that in a second. Need you to join my 32-team IDP. Man, I have so many leagues that I have to actually leave leagues and not join leagues, but I do appreciate that. How's TJ? We'll talk about the Steelers. Eminwari, Julian Love, Xavier McKinney, Jalen Petrie, Cam Curl, big decisions. Yeah. If you're only choosing one, Nick Eminwari, he is him. So that would be the guy that I would go with. Let me know if it's more than one. All right. Look, if you guys are tuning in, as you kind of roll in here, obviously I've been answering questions. So we're off to a hot start here with a lot of questions coming in. So I appreciate you guys as always. This is going to be an IDP stream, obviously, so we're going to focus on the IDP stuff. If you are tuning into the channel for the first time and you don't know what IDP is, I guess promptly see yourself out, or stay on, maybe learn a little bit. But yeah, I guess I could do an intro now. Now that I've already gotten distracted by a bunch of questions, I'm not used to this, guys. I told you it's going to be a complete disaster. So I appreciate you tuning in for the train wreck. But yeah, I'm John Macri. This is the PFF Fantasy Podcast, IDP edition. And again, as we always do, we're going to be going game by game, breaking down all of the IDP relevant information heading into a very crucial week 16, obviously round 2 of the fantasy playoffs. So for most, that is, I'm ignoring the week 18 crowd. I know, as much as I appreciate wanting to squeeze one more week out of the fantasy season, you're wrong if you're playing in week 18. It's a complete disaster, and you need to adjust your schedules for next year. But all right, here we go. We are live. So yeah, I recognize this might not be ideal for like the audio crowd. So, if you're listening later, I apologize for that, but there will be timestamps in the episode description. You could cut down on the potential nonsense and stuff. But for those of you who are tuning in live, as you've already been doing, feel free to ask questions, drop comments, yell at me if I've gotten things wrong this year. If you want to talk, whatever, video games, non-football questions, I'm mostly open to that as well. No offense questions. This is for the IDP community who has been massively supportive of this channel all season long. So I thank you guys a ton. And yeah, we'll get into some questions before we get into the games, as long as they make sense here. But for those of you who are interested in, IDP, getting access to the IDP rankings, locked articles, IDP report, Nate start sit, wide receiver man zone coverage report, all the great draft content that we'll have hitting the site in the next few months as well. You can do so with a PFF Plus subscription. And if you're, wanting to save some schkarol around this holiday season, you can use the promo code HOLIDAY30 to get 30% off that PFF Plus subscription. That will carry you all the way through this time next year. So great time to get in there right meow. Few more questions have come in here. Do you think Rashawn Gary benefits from the Micah Parsons absence? I don't think it makes a big difference for Rashawn Gary. Again, I could probably save this for the Green Bay talk, which will be in a little bit. But I don't think it'll be a massive, stock up situation for him. I think the playing time is going to remain the same, and he's ultimately relied on his own ability. And early in the season was benefiting from the Micah Parsons attention that has gone away a little bit. So I am less optimistic, I guess, about Gary being better now that Parsons out. Good news, John. I had a bye week. Bad news, my team is falling apart. Michael Bianco, I am very sorry to hear that. I understand, injuries have been a complete disaster this year. As always, we have to, kind of try to work around all of this nonsense and crap that the injury Grim Reaper puts upon us, especially at this time of year. So hopefully you can persevere and make it through. We'll see how things go in the next week or two, because yeah, there's going to be more injuries, unfortunately. Jake, everyone needs help when you are okay. Jake, Jake is flattering me. I think we're playing each other in a matchup this week as well. So Jake's trying to get my guard down. I appreciate that. Is Cam Curl a set and forget for tonight, or should I check waivers? That is from Auntie is Fixing. So good question. Yeah, Curl, he's obviously DB1 on the year right now. So I still typically trust them. I got him as DB8 this week, safety 8. So not necessarily locked in. Like there are 7 guys that I would start ahead of him. But he is still a very solid option, and we'll get into that in just a second. Okay, looks like the rest are start sit. So I'll try to keep an eye on these as we go. Beckett, shout out the PFF fantasy account, is in here as well. Good morning to you, Varvirus. I'm going to struggle with names, guys. It's the only way. But yeah, we'll leave this comment up here. IDP is the greatest way to play fantasy football as we go in to the games now. So yeah, we'll get it covered here. So let's start with Rams Seahawks Thursday night football. We'll start with the Rams defensive line, because there were some Jared Verse questions. So start Verse, Chase Young, or Jalen Walker, for example. So I would trust Jared Verse this week. Look, we've mostly been trusting him all season. I know it hasn't been perfect from Jared Verse this year. There's going to be no Charles Cross tonight for Seattle. That is their best pass blocking offensive lineman by a wide margin. So like I got Jared versus edge 14, even with the Charles Cross news, just because he has been a little bit inconsistent. But I still typically trust them. The biggest issue here really is Sam Darnold, right? He continues to be very, very good at avoiding sacks this year. It's been really annoying for our pass rushers. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, especially on a short week, right? Like that's always the concern. But, you know, these are the kind of things that we have to deal with. And I'm fine with Verse and Young, even though they laid a dud last week. I'm nervous about starting them a little bit. I kind of hate the idea of starting them and then them laying another dud, 5 points or less or anything like that. But again, we're trusting the talent, we're trusting the process here. We understand that these guys are some of the better pass rushers in the NFL, and riding that kind of volatility of the position is just the nature of what we have to do as IDP managers, especially for the defensive linemen. So yeah, we're all gluttons for punishment as well. So we're gonna we're gonna ride with Jared Verse and Byron Young for the most part. I got them as the fringe, like edge 1, edge 2 options for me this week. And then Kobe Turner, same kind of thing. He's woken up a little bit recently, more of a kind of a high end DT2. So yeah, all that being said, for the most part, I'm starting them, but I guess I'm not happy about it. So hopefully we can, they can take that pessimism and let it fuel their production this week. Hopefully. Man, there are a lot of questions. I do not know if I can keep up with all these questions now. So we're going to ride through. Maybe at the end of each game, I'll give the questions a scroll, see which ones relate to the game that we just talked about. So there might be a little bit of a pause in there as I get a chance to kind of read the questions really quick and see where we're at. But yeah, we'll just keep rolling, and then we'll answer questions in between games, if that makes sense. So Rams linebackers, nobody needs to be told to start Nate Landman at this point. He hit double-digit tackles again last week. Neutral matchup here against a very run-heavy Seattle Seahawks offense. He's locked in for us once again. Omar Cummins Spates is purely a deep league option, right? Not playing full-time snaps, so we're just going to look at him for deep leagues. Rams defensive back. So I haven't seen anything significant that Quentin Lake is going to be activated off IR in time for tonight's game. I probably should have checked that before the stream, but you guys will know. So if he is active, it would obviously be nice, because the Rams, they did begin a pretty heavy rotation with their non-Cam Curl DBs last week between Cam Kinchins, Jalen McCullough, and Josh Wallace. So Curl is going to be probably the only one that I want to trust unless Lake is active and you're desperate, right? So there is a chance that Lake gets eased in if he's activated. It's a short week as well. So the main concern is going to be trusting Lake this week, is that he is kind of eased into action. So that will be the only thing to kind of keep an eye on. But there has been a pretty heavy rotation, at least with the Rams DBs. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I would probably just trust Cam Curl this week. Let's go to Seattle. On the defensive line side of things, they also face a quarterback who has kind of been a pain in the ass to take down. That is Matthew Stafford, also among the best in the league in that regard. So not ideal for Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, and company. Unfortunately, Murphy and Williams, they remain startable, though the pass rush upside is limited, right? It's just not easy to find defensive tackles with more potential there. But obviously, if you have them, then I'm fine to pivot to avoid this matchup. The edges in Seattle, I probably find less trustworthy. So DeMarcus Lawrence, Uchenna Nwosu, and company, like their production has been more inconsistent this year, and they weren't even able to get after the 44-year-old grandpa Phillip Rivers last week. So MVP candidate Stafford does pose a tougher matchup, right? So just keep that in mind if you're considering any of the Seattle edges. Seattle's defensive backs, Big D, Nick Emenwari, he is ascending to IDP God tier at this point, and he gets one of the best tackle matchups to smash again this week. The Rams rank in the top 5 in tackles allowed to the safety position and the cornerback position. So that lines up perfectly for Nick Emenwari's usage, his deployment, his alignment. I don't think there's any DB that I'd rather start over Emenwari this week. The guy has been literally everything that we'd hoped for coming out of the NFL draft. We glazed him back in April and May in those rookie DB preview episodes, John Glosser and I. So yeah, so far so great for Emenwari. So he's an auto start right now, even on a short week. He's just been so sick. As for Julian Love, he still didn't play 100% of his snaps in his second game back last week from IR. Maybe he gets there this week, but I'd be good with him as a start as well, just given the matchup, right? So I'm assuming that his snaps are going to tick up here. He's typically been a full-time player and a really nice matchup this week. And then Devin Witherspoon also definitely in our our CB required lineups. Seattle linebacker. So the Rams actually come in as a very poor matchup for linebacker tackles. Like, unless you're Captain Jack Campbell, like, who, is another IDP god, you're probably not overcoming this matchup. So for Ernest Jones, he can overcome the matchup. I wouldn't put him, in that Jack Campbell tier of linebackers right now. So just kind of a fine LB2 type this week for Ernest Jones. And then Drake Thomas, also the clear LB2. He's only been playing like 50 to 60% of the snaps right now. So very deep leagues only for Drake Thomas. Okay, I'll work backwards here from some of the questions that have come in. I'm going to pull up my rankings as well. Let me see. I have Go Beers has Jeffrey Simmons or Jared Verse. So I have Jeffrey Simmons ahead of Verse this week. Eminwari or Hufanga. Like I said, Eminwari is a lock for me. Hufanga is really high in the rankings this week as well, though, because he also gets a great matchup. But I've just been rolling with Eminwari. That is a tough choice, but yeah, really like Nick Eminwari and Jeffrey Simmons this week. Christopher asks, start to Eminwari, Tyke, Starks, or Nubin. So it's Eminwari and Tyke for me. Tyke or Eminwari, it is Eminwari for me. Eminwari has moved off the taxi squad for me this week. My DB room is in shambles. Well, not anymore. Eminwari to the rescue. I got Eminwari in my IDP Dynasty and Keeper Leagues. Absolutely hyped for that breakout. Yeah, Eminwari has been an absolute dog. We are trusting him pretty much every single week right now. The guy has just been so damn good. Eminwari, again, another start sit where we're putting him in lineup. You do need two, though. So Nick Cross is the other one. Nick Cross also gets a great matchup this week. So would be putting him in that second spot for you, Varvirus Breaker. Byron Young versus Chase Young. I'm going to go with Young this week. Good luck. So let's go. What do I have? I have Byron Young this week. Byron Young has been good. Again, I know Chase Young has been hitting on some sacks here recently, but Byron Young has been really good as well. So it's close, but I do like Byron Young still. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're okay. Pick 3 to start. So Eminwari again, Tyke, and I think I have Battle over Hamilton this week. So Andy, yeah, Eminwari, Hamilton, or Eminwari, Tyke, and Battle. Can we trust any Bears linebacker? We will get to that one. Live for the pretty green colors. Yes, that always helps me visualize things better and know that the matchups are good. Verse Hines Allen or Latu from the Wilsiak. That is a good question. Let me see. So I have, yeah, those are tough matchups across the board. I went with Josh Hines Allen. He does have the edge for me in the rankings this week. It is really, really tight though. So if you're not feeling it, if your gut is saying Verse or Latu, like, it is definitely close enough that I think you can trust either one of those options there. But I do have Hines Allen ahead for what it's worth this week. Verse Highsmith or Russo. I from Heat Headley, I have Alex Highsmith this week. So that would be my option there. Landman. Okay, we did cover the Rams. So Landman, Cashman, or D White from Terry, the Terrible. Love it. I got Cashman at linebacker this week, and I have Devin White as Devin White and Cashman this week. So as much as I said, we're locking Landman into lineups, you have 3 elite options there. So if I have to choose 2, I don't think you're going to go wrong with either one. So Cashman and Landman Cashman and White, sorry, for me, and then Landry Verse or Herbig. I've got Landry and Verse this week. We'll talk about Herbig in a bit about the concerns there. I also hope Brian Burns wakes up this week. We'll see what happens, but yeah. And then we'll talk about some of these other ones in a little bit. Yeah, I think we've got up to, oh man. Yeah, we're pretty much caught up. Sit verse for Abdul Carter or Jalen Phillips, Drew the Incredible. The closest for me is Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter has been really good, like we've talked about all season long. We'll talk about him in a bit, but yeah, Abdul Carter has just been excellent. So that's the closest if you are looking for a pivot option. Jalen Phillips has been good. He just hasn't been productive. So, and then Tyke, I think we answered this one. Tyke or Eminwari, it's Eminwari. So, okay, we'll keep going. We'll answer some more questions in a little bit. Let's go on to Philly and Washington next. And we'll start with the Philadelphia linebackers. So Nakobe Dean, he's been so damn hot right now. Obviously, the 4 sacks helps. But even in a week where, the defense last week barely saw the field against a completely inept Raiders offense, he still doubled the tackle totals of anyone else on the team, and 2 were for a loss as well. So great matchup for him and Zach Bond this week. I'd be happy to have them in lineups if you got them. Philadelphia's defensive line, I don't think Jalen Carter will be back this week. I know he didn't practice yesterday. We'll see if he practices today, but that would probably be, if he doesn't practice, I would assume he's not playing. So Moro Ojimo and Jordan Davis should get a decent amount of work, again, if Carter is out. So they are playable in DT required leagues. Now, go figure, against the Raiders last week, that it wasn't Jalen Phillips or Jalix Hunt that got sacks for us, but freaking Brandon Graham, inspired by Phillip Rivers, giving hope to old, previously retired men everywhere. He lands 2 sacks last week. Nobody was starting Brandon Graham and his, whatever it was, 15% snap share. Nobody should be starting him this week, chasing that production. It's just not worth it. So Jalen Phillips and Jalix Hunt, they obviously let us down in a nice spot. Obviously a massive bummer there, but again, the defense barely saw the field in that game as well. So that was part of the problem. But the other part was that Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith also shared snaps again. So Vic Fangio has been really kind of inconsistent with how he's been deploying Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith, though at least with Jalen Phillips, he's actually been out there quite a bit. So he remains kind of the safest bet, I think, in a decent matchup. Hunt and Smith, more streaming type options if you really hate your other options. All right, Philadelphia's DBs. Cooper DeJean is in for us. We know for CB required leagues, absolutely. Reed Blankenship, Marcus Epps at safety, not so much. It's a neutral matchup, but those guys are playing very deep for the most part, so they're going to be pretty inconsistent, and we really want to put them in more for like the great matchups. For Washington, so the Eagles are the worst matchup for linebacker tackles. This has been the case for a while now this season, so not ideal for old reliable Bobby Wagner there. Actually, Bobby didn't have a great game last week either after that massive Week 14 performance, but Wagner will still be an LB2 option for most rosters. And we're okay with that depending on who your other options are. As for Frankie Louvu, he didn't do FA last week either. This has kind of been the norm for him for most of the season. We're all well aware of how overrated Frankie Louvu was this offseason by this point. So no need to go into that. He just remains that kind of boom bust LB3, LB4 type every single week. And then Washington's defensive backs. So the Commanders rotated their safeties last week, Quan Martin and Will Harris, just enough with Jeremy Reeves that it basically limits their potential last week and going forward here. And yes, Quan Jartavius Martin, aka Jart Mart, he still led the team in tackles, but my concern is that when we get to this point in the season and we're choosing between a safety who plays 100% of snaps and one that doesn't, which one are you going to choose, right? And we just don't want to mess with that at this point in the year, right? Because it just increases their chances of laying an egg for us, which can end our seasons, right? So F that noise. We're just going to ignore them and move on. Don't worry if they get points. Just consider them non-options if you have other choices. So a poor matchup for Mikey Sanders still as well. He had a great game last week, so might not be in that top 12 cornerback range again this week. And then Washington's defensive line. We had a big talk about them last week. They are not good enough or very likely to even be on rosters of teams in the Final Four. So we are okay to move on there. What I'm going to do too, I'm going to put up the game order that we're covering here. That way people can see too which games we've already covered. If you're coming in late, which ones are still to come, and et cetera. So you can see where we're at in the show. But okay, well, before we go on to the Saturday the other Saturday game, I'll look at a couple other questions here. I need to mark where I left off, because that is going to be the hardest part for me. Okay. So yeah, I apologize if I'm behind on the chat. If I do miss a start sit question too, feel free to like put it in the VOD comments on YouTube after the show as well. I will always try to answer those. But yeah. So Joe the Lion, thank you. Nice channel, man. Listen to you every week this year. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. All right, Sweat Bros, we'll save. Actually, yeah, we'll save that one. We're going to talk about them later. Jeffrey Simmons, Alex, we'll talk about that in a bit. Abdul Carter, we'll talk about later. FA Luvu going to be a free agent. Oh, man. Yeah, free agent. Yes. Tyke Orris, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So this week, we'll talk about Chicago in a second, and that'll be our lead-in question here for the Chicago. But I do have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson ahead of Tyke Smith this week, just one spot ahead. So literally a coin flip if you're not feeling it. Crush that Luvu regression preseason. Yeah, so many people were high on him. Exactly. This is the point, right? The Wilsiak, like you said, with IDP, we'll talk about it a lot in the offseason. We're not going to chase points from the previous year because there's so much volatility from those numbers, and we know which ones are going to be regressible and which ones aren't regressible. Maybe a new word, we'll find out. But yeah, Frankie Luvu was a very clear candidate that he was going to go down and was being drafted as an LB1, which was insane to me. So all right. Love the live. Glad you can make it to the event this year. And thank you, Noah. I appreciate that as well. Thank you for coming in. And I apologize. Look, not our usual thing here because we're answering so many questions and we're trying to go. So it's a little bit disjointed. This is what I expected. But yeah, this is part of the fun, right? So again, feel free to ask the questions. I'm going to try to do my best to answer them. Like I said, if I miss anything, we will go to it. We'll answer it later in the VOD if you throw it back in there. All right. Green Bay, Chicago is up next. And Green Bay's defensive line. Yeah, we can't have nice things. Obviously, we lost another elite IDP option this past week. Micah Parsons tore his ACL. Injuries, obviously a killer every single year. They don't stop because it's the fantasy playoffs. I can't wait to see who we lose this week because I'm sure it's going to be somebody. Hopefully, they're players that we're playing against and not ones that are in our lineups. But the injury Grim Reaper demands his pound of flesh, and we just have to hope it's not a major loss for us. So anyways, as far as our Packers D-line IDP options go, yeah, we lost Parsons. We've lost Devontae Wyatt for DT required leaves. So that does leave us with Rashawn Gary, who apparently has hit his 7-sack quota for the year way back in week 8. And now he's decided that he's done with that job, doesn't need to do anymore. So I really have a hard time trusting Rashawn Gary. There was a question earlier about if that, Micah Parsons injury affects Rashawn Gary at all. I don't think so. Like, I don't think that Rashawn Gary is going to get more playing time. It's likely going to mean more playing time for Kingsley Enagbare and Lucas Van Ness as they fill that hole. But I don't think that they're necessarily going to lean into Rashawn Gary as this, 90% snap guy. If they do, obviously he can fall into production, but he just hasn't been good enough as far as pass rush metrics wise to trust. So really just more of a deep league option only at this point. Green Bay's linebackers. Yeah, we at least get a good linebacker matchup here, right? So Chicago giving up the second most linebacker tackles. So Quay Walker and Edrin Cooper, they should be good to go here. So I'm starting them this week for the most part where we have them. And then Green Bay's defensive backs, Evan Williams, he got injured last week and they replaced him with Zane Anderson last week, not Javon Bullard. So Zane Anderson played 100% of the snaps once Williams left the game. So I mostly this week, we're going to prefer Xavier McKinney in a neutral matchup, obviously. But if Evan Williams is out and you're really desperate and you need a body, then that's where Zane Anderson can come in. Also a nice matchup for Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine again. So I'm good with them. And like Mal Patterson notes here, Keyshawn Nixon has been killing it this year. And thanks for all your hard work and research. Love the show. Thank you, Mal. I appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you. But yeah, Keyshawn Nixon has been excellent. He's obviously the preferred option if you have that choice in CB required leagues. He gets a great matchup here. So I would be putting Keyshawn Nixon in play. Yeah, if I did miss you, and you could put the question back in, I will try to find them as they go. It's just there's so many that it's hard to kind of keep track of them all. So yeah, we'll keep going. We'll go on to Chicago next. Potentially the return of Tremaine Edmonds. Maybe, right? Well, we'll at least know earlier than the Sunday games, which really helps for lineup decisions. Obviously, the one benefit of short weeks, I guess, is that we'll know if Tremaine Edmonds is going to play. Now, as far as starting Edmonds, this is a good matchup, but we've seen the team ease in their linebackers before, right? It was recently TJ Edwards 2 weeks ago that they did not play in a full-time role. Now TJ Edwards went back up to 100% last week, which we suspected would happen, right? We talked about that on the show. And then it was DeMarco Jackson became the part-time LB2, somehow had a monster game. But if Edmonds is back, then Jackson is basically out of lineups completely. So I'll mark TJ Edwards as basically the safest start. Yeah, like Owen Taylor asks, can we trust TJ Edwards? I will. Yeah, I'll say we'll trust him. We know for sure that he's back in that full-time role. That's where he played last week. So if Edmonds is back, that's the tougher question about if we should trust him, because he'll be, for me at least, this week is probably more of a deeper option for me in that kind of LB3 range. Like, I just don't want to get too risky because there's at least a chance that he's not going to play 100% of snaps, Tremaine Edmonds. And I don't want to lock you guys into that spot either without knowing that that's a possibility. So just want to make sure that you guys know the risk there. So it could turn out to be nothing. Edmonds could be back to his ultra efficient ways in a 100% role and deliver us for us no matter what. But again, semifinals weeks, like, we can't be skipping over, I guess, some of these possibilities at least. So does that make sense, or am I rambling? Yeah, let me know. All right, Chicago DBs, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he did end up delivering last week. He kind of made us sweat it out a little bit, then came through in the fourth quarter with a pick, a tackle for a loss, and a pass breakup. Now, it's not a great matchup this week. The Packers typically only play about 60% of their snaps in 11 personnel, so it doesn't change Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's overall playing time, but it would potentially move him out of the slot a little bit more. And I know what you're probably thinking. Have you considered that he's got that dog in him, you nerd? And to be fair, you're right. It's a good point. And for that reason, I still consider him as a viable option once again, because he has just found a way to be productive regardless of the matchup. And the Bears putting him in that favorable Dennis Allen slot role, right? So we'll continue to give him the green light in our lineups. As for Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, they're closer to fringe starter range, not as locked in. Yeah, they don't maybe have that dog in them as much, right? They got that pup in them, but that doesn't, mean that they can't help out every once in a while. They do show up and deliver. So we'll depend on your other options, basically. And then Chicago's defensive line. So difficult pass rush matchup here for Montez Sweat and Austin Booker. Sweat, always going to be the preferred option because of the talent. Booker is the volume heavy option. He fell into 2 sacks last week. That was cool, but we're not necessarily going to chase that over some of like the higher skilled options against Jordan Love specifically, who has been so good at avoiding sacks. So a couple more questions here, then I'll play an ad. So we got Keyshawn Nixon. That one we'll save. Can we trust TJ? An Always Sunny nickname proposal for Amen Ogbong Mamiga. Ongo Gablo. I don't get this one. I love Always Sunny, and I don't get this reference. I'm missing something here. Other than that, but you got to remember too, I'm illiterate, guys, so I can't actually read. But anyways, okay. If you were underdog chasing points, would you play a DL1, LB1, or DB1? So yeah, it's usually going to be the DL1, right? For me, just because as much as sacks are unstable, we can point to the pass rush metrics. We can point to the talent creating sacks being more stable than something like interceptions, right? Interceptions are almost entirely dependent on what the offense is doing and just being in the right space at the right time. At least there's a little bit more control for our defensive linemen who have talent, who can win at the line of scrimmage and potentially put up those high pass rush numbers. So that's where I would go typically for if I'm chasing points and hoping that we can get a sack or multiple sacks. But yeah, linebacker more, it's just for tackles. Those are the safe floor type guys. DB, it's so incredibly volatile that yeah, it's harder to kind of try to hit on some of that upside. So for me, it's DL1. Okay, we did cover Green Bay. So Richie Cash asks Keyshawn Nixon or Malik Mustafa. So good question. I believe I have Mustafa this week. Actually, no, I have Keyshawn Nixon. So Keyshawn Nixon is the play for me, just a couple spots ahead of Mustafa. We'll talk about Mustafa in a bit, but Phillip Rivers at quarterback does change things a little bit. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Winfield, Chin, or Mustafa from Henry Odom. I have Jeremy Chin this week. Think there will be a bounce back. So we'll talk about that when we get there as well. Live, baby, let's go. B. Shaw, thank you. Appreciate you tuning in. All right, so we'll get into the Buffalo-Cleveland game, but first, we will do a quick ad break.
Everyone's got takes. Numbers have truth. And the truth is, most people are betting with emotion. Sportsbooks feed on it. TikTok rules sell it. The hype machine runs on it. That's how you lose. PFF is different. You're betting with winning data. The same data trusted by all 32 NFL teams and the sharpest minds in the game. PFF Betting Tools take every prop, every matchup, every angle, and run them through our custom models. Built on the best football data in the world. What comes back is your edge. Simple, sharp, and built to win. Want to go deeper? PFF puts a pro-level analytics department in your hands, giving you the same insights teams use to find every advantage. Build your game plan with matchup analysis. Project every snap, every matchup, and every edge before kickoff. Because the smartest plays start long before Sunday. Hit rates show how a player performs against their prop and against defenses built the same way. It's the data that gives you real confidence in every pick. Next, Key Insights translates PFF data into the story behind every matchup, giving you the why that powers your bets. From coverage schemes to defensive looks, it's the context that turns raw numbers into winning decisions. When you're ready to take action, filter through every prop on the market and focus on the opportunities that matter, by game, matchup, or value. Then, shop for the best available line in your area and tap your book of choice to place the bet instantly. Everyone's got takes, but now you've got truth. Bet with data, win with PFF.
All right, we are back, and we'll get into Buffalo Cleveland with the Wilsiak. I do get it. I had to take a second to read it carefully. Ongo Gabloigian. Yes, of course. Danny DeVito's character that plays the art connoisseur. That's the one. But I do like that for Amon Ogbonigba. So yeah, makes sense. And yeah, hit the like button. I forgot to mention that if you guys are watching on the YouTube, please don't forget to like, subscribe. I do have my hand full, but we're going to manage. It's going to be a little bit of a longer episode today as we try to answer the questions live, but we'll make it through. All right, Buffalo Cleveland is up next. So we'll start with Buffalo's linebackers. Terrell Bernard appears, I would say, likely to get back in lineups this week. He was seemingly close last week, so I'd expect him to be back in this week. Obviously, if not, then Shaq Thompson would be the option for us. Although last week, Matt Milano turned into the Italian Stallion. He had a massive game, which included 2 sacks every once in a while, right? With Matt Milano, the moon hits his eye like a big pizza pie, and he transforms into the Italian Stallion, gives us a big IDP game. It's rare, but it does happen. And yes, I can make that joke. Okay, I'm half Italian. But no, we know what Milano has been for the most part this year, right? We'll leave him kind of as that deep league option, especially in a neutral matchup. Even Bernard, who we'd expect to play a full-time role, we know what he's been this season as well, just been super inefficient. So it's just a low-end starter for us, or lower-end full-time starter for Bernard this week as well, if he is back in there. Buffalo's defensive lineman, a nice pass rush matchup here for Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau. Rousseau got a sack last week, and get this, Joey Bosa, he got his first ever batted pass per PFF last week. So first one of his entire career, 9 years in the league. Obviously, he's had a lot of missed time in there, but most defensive linemen get at least one batted pass a year. So even just by accident. So the fact that it took this long for Bosa to get his first has been pretty amazing. But that's just been something that I kind of noticed a couple years ago, and I've kind of been waiting for that to happen. So it's important to me, damn it. But anyways, this week, Bosa and Rousseau, they should be considered, I think, strong streaming options in a matchup like this against the league's worst pass blocking unit and Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, you see the red there, obviously, but he'll take some sacks. I don't think we have to worry too much about that. Buffalo's defensive backs, So let's see. We get a great matchup for Cole Bishop this week. He has been the lone full-time safety in Buffalo recently, and the Browns have been at least a favorable matchup for tackle potential. For the Bills cornerbacks, though, Teron Johnson gets a poor matchup in particular because the Browns, they just don't spend much time in 11 personnel. So he could be used a little bit against Harold Fannin, but either way, the Browns just haven't been able to generate much for the cornerback position in terms of tackles. So not a great one to stream this week, Terrell Bernard. For Cleveland, let's pull up their slide. Defensive line, we just continue to be on Myles Garrett sack watch, or a sack record watch. I guess you know what I mean. Josh Allen, he has been sackable this year, and we're not really afraid of any matchup when it comes to Myles Garrett. He only needs 1.5 sacks to break the record, 1 to tie. He'll have a shot this week for sure. Cleveland's linebackers. Carson Schwessinger has become a locked-in weekly starter for us recently. 6 straight double-digit tackle games for him right now. The Bills are a slightly above average matchup for linebacker tackles as well. So like that, Devin Bush, not Mohamed Diabate, remains the deep league option. I know Diabate had a nice game last week, but he did so on just over 50% of the snaps. Bush was at 87%. So don't fall into the Diabate trap. And then Cleveland's DB is a great matchup for Tyson Campbell, and the Bills are giving up the second most tackles per game to the cornerback position. He's really the best option, Tyson Campbell, by a decent amount, because Ronnie Hickman and Grant Delpit have been anything but reliable this season. So at least a nice opportunity to target Tyson Campbell as a starting or streaming option, depending on your league size. Okay, there was a Carson Schwessinger question here somewhere. Cedric Gray or Carson Schwessinger. So I don't think Cedric Gray, we'll talk about that in a bit. He is in the concussion protocol, so he's likely to miss this week. So Carson Schwessinger will be in for me. Let me just read here. Love the show. I'm hurting. I put a move, so it's between Delpit and Bland. Also have to start TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards should be good. Ryboon. Delpit and Bland. So this week, I'll tell you exactly who I have. Delpit is there and Bland is there. So I have Delpit slightly ahead of Deron Bland this week. So I would be putting Delpit in, just, rolling with, I usually give the edge to the safety position anyways when it's tight like that. So that's where I would go. Yeah. Let's see. What else do we got? Carson. Okay, we got another one with Carson Schwessinger, Jamie and Sherwood, DeMarvian Overshown, Robert Spillane, or Hanky Two Toes. I'm going to go with, I have Schwessinger as one for sure, and then it's between Overshown and Sherwood for me in the other spot. So I have Overshown this week. So nice matchup for him. We'll talk about that in a bit. Will G 007. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. I really, really do appreciate that. That's very generous of you. I can't thank you enough. You got a DL start one in a must win. James Pierce, Abdul Carter, Tuli Tuipulotu, Dallas Turner, Jalen Phillips, Chase Young, or Alex Highsmith. Man, that is a lot of options for a start one. So that is going to be tricky. I have, let me see, make double check. I have Alex Highsmith this week against Detroit. So Jared Goff has been kind of hit and miss as far as taking sacks. We'll talk about that in a second. But as far as playing time and ability goes, Alex Highsmith is the option for me this week. So it's really close though. Like Tuli Tuipulotu is definitely close in there, and Abdul Carter has actually got himself pretty close as well. So those are kind of the three that I'd be considering. I know James Pierce has been on fire. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But I'm going to lean Highsmith. If you're not feeling that one, it's close between Carter and Tuli. So definitely trust your gut when it comes to those players. So last one, and then we'll move on to the next game from Be More Like Lamar. Appreciate all the insight this season. Points for kick return and punt return: Marcus Jones, Austin Booker, Tarheeb Still. So yeah, I'll go Marcus Jones this week. Obviously, the kick and punt return stuff helps. It's not a great matchup. We'll talk about that, but Marcus Jones does stay on the field a little bit more than your typical nickel corner. And then Tavius Robinson or Nick Herbig. So, and Alshire or Bernard. Yeah, we covered Buffalo. I believe I have Alshire this week in a matchup that was slightly better. And then, the other one I know I have Nick Herbig. So we'll talk about Herbig as well in a second, but it wasn't ideal for him, but still like him a little bit better than Tavius Robinson. So I actually have Bernard this week if he plays over Azeez Al-Shaair. All right. Need to start one Black Mage this week from Treasure Palome, Lulu, or Vivi. Oh man. Look, Vivi, I think is the best of the Black Mages. Definitely going to be my choice there. But Lulu has two big reasons to start her as well as a potential option. All right, so we'll go into let's see. We'll keep moving. I'll try to answer some of these more. I'll put where did we leave off? We left off at the Black Mage one. So we'll try to get into the other ones as we go here. Let's go on to Cincinnati and Miami. So starting with the Cincinnati linebackers, Barrett Carter, unfortunately, he's been really ineffective recently. It's unfortunate because he is the only full-time option there in Cincinnati, but just nothing happening over the last few games for him. So last week was the worst of his games this season, just 3 tackles. And, at least for Demetrius Knight, he found his way to 2 sacks with only a few tackles, but Demetrius Knight, because of the playing time, really only more of a deep league option anyway. So Carter has been the more widely rostered, more widely started option. He just shit the bed last week, right? So he's not a lock for lineups. It's a neutral matchup. If you have, 100% snap linebackers, I'd consider starting them for the most part over Barrett Carter right now. If you don't have any other 100% snap linebackers, I might roll with Carter again and hope he comes through here, since he's definitely due for a bigger game at the very least. Cincinnati's defensive line, nice pass rush matchup here. Not that the Bengals have any nice pass rushers. Myles Murphy picked up a couple of sacks last week. He played 93% of the snaps. So just a pure volume-based option where if you want to stream him, this isn't the worst week to do so, considering the matchup, and we know he's going to play a ton. Even Joseph Osai to a lesser extent, with the same kind of logic, depending on what kind of spot you're in. But Quinn Ewers is going to be at quarterback this week, so not Tua Tagovailoa. Quinn Ewers, he only has 4 pressured dropbacks this year. He was sacked on 2 of them. So his numbers are there, 50% pressure to sack conversion rate, which is obviously abysmal. But on a larger sample size, that number will come down naturally. So at least it's not, that he's an amazing quarterback at avoiding sacks. So, Cincinnati's defensive backs. Last week, it was Jordan Battle's turn to have a big week. This week, it might be Geno Stone's turn, the way these guys have produced this year. They've both definitely been good enough, though, to keep their spots in our lineup. So since the matchup isn't complete dog water, I'll have both of those guys in starting range in the rankings this week. And on the Miami side of things, the linebackers, nobody needs to be told to start Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dodson. You're starting them. They're awesome. Luckily, we didn't have to, crack out the KJ Britt from his in case of emergency glass last week on Monday night, and Dodson looked no worse for wear. So definitely good to go there. Miami's DBs. So Stinka Fitzpatrick, he suffered an injury last week. He is likely to miss this game, which means we'll probably see both Ashton Davis and Fatu Melifonwu play full-time roles at safety, which hasn't been the case for the most part recently. So it'll increase their value some, but not enough where I'd want to start, I guess, either guy, right? In a below average matchup here. The cornerbacks, Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas, they're definitely streaming options this week in a really nice matchup. The Bengals have fed the cornerback position this year, and then obviously T. Higgins coming back is going to help that as well. So we could get some nice production there if you're in need of a streamer. Miami's full-time cornerbacks could be an option. And then Miami's defensive line, Zach Sealer added a sack last week, so now 3.5 sacks over the last 2 games. Not the worst matchup to keep that going either. So it is solid DT required option this week for Zach Sealer. As for Chop and Chubb, Bradley Chubb, probably the preferred option here because he's basically because of playing time. He played 85% of snaps last week. These guys both have just not really shown much in terms of pass rush metrics. Like Chop had a 0% win rate and not a single pressure last week, playing 62% of the snaps against the Steelers. So the team did release Matthew Judon, so Chop probably going to play a little bit more this week. It just gets really hard, I think, to kind of trust these types of players at this point in the year. even if they have like a big game, like, we can't get caught up in it too much because odds are that it will be an outlier. So those outliers are hard to pinpoint when they'll happen as well. Okay, we'll go into the next game in a second. Where were we? All right. Who would you feel better starting? Tyke Smith, Antoine Winfield, or Jeremy Chin from Two Void? So it's going to be Jeremy Chin from me this week. I really like the matchup. We'll talk about him in a second, but I do think he's in for a bounce back week. Joe, Tuli Pelotu, or James Pierce. Love the channel, by the way. Thanks for all your help. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the support. I believe I have Tuli this week. We'll get to those guys in a second. But yeah, Tuli is the highest for me of that group this week. Let's see. Give me a second, guys. Just going to read here. We got a super chat from Atlas. Appreciate that. $4.99. Thank you so much. Thanks for the work you do. Surviving playoffs so far in every IDP league I'm in. That is awesome to hear. The show has been a huge help for 2 years now. Merry Christmas to you as well, Atlas. I appreciate that. That is very generous of you, but even more so, I'm glad that you are in the playoffs, surviving in all your IDP leagues. That is the main thing. So yeah, hopefully we can bring it home 2 more weeks here, get a championship. Let's see. Some of the bigger ones, guys, what I think I'll do, drop these ones, like the ones where there's like 5 options, drop those ones in the VOD comments afterwards. And that way I could get a little bit more time to think about it and give you the correct starting option. I just don't want to rush them and potentially, give you the wrong information. It's hard to kind of look at the rankings. Like if it's 1 or 2 players, I can definitely do it. But yeah, well, if there's like a big one, a whole list of players, just put them in the YouTube comments and we'll definitely get there. Okay, let's keep going. Kansas City, Tennessee is up next. Kansas City's defensive line. So I do want to start here because we got sacks from Jalen Watson, Charles Omenihu, Ashton Gelati, and even Jaden Hicks last week. Where the hell was Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, the guys that we were actually starting? I have no idea. They were rubbish. We'll see. They'll definitely get a chance to redeem themselves this week against the Tennessee Titans, who, in another bizarro universe situation last week, the Tennessee Titans didn't allow a single sack for the first time all year against the San Francisco 49ers. So the Chiefs pass rush is a little bit better than the 49ers at this point in the year. So we'll see if Tennessee is a little bit more vulnerable like they have been all year. And I don't hate going back to Furious George and Chris Jones this week if you have them. Kansas City's linebackers. So both Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil were really productive last week. It's going to be hard for, I think, both of those guys to hit double-digit tackles again this week, just considering the Titans offense. They rank 30th in tackles per game to the linebacker position. So I'll mostly just be trusting Nick Bolton this week if you have to. DBs for Kansas City, same thing. The Teen Titans here, they're a bad matchup for our non-pass rushing IDPs. So Chiefs DBs, it doesn't really bode well for that group. Maybe outside of Chamari Connor, he hasn't been exactly matchup proof himself. I don't hate him this week. Like, he'll definitely get some blitz opportunities, can maybe finally deliver there. He's certainly due for a sack, considering his usage and this matchup as well with Cam Ward at quarterback. And the Titans also do play the highest rate of 11 personnel. So he'll be the only one I trust this week for the Kansas City defensive backs. Tennessee Titans. Let's talk about their linebackers here first, because unfortunately we suffered another big blow with an IDP injury last week, where I think some are even calling it a bigger loss than Micah Parsons and Brian Branch combined. Some are saying it because Cedric the Gray suffered a concussion, is now likely to miss this week. He has been our tackling efficient Chad. He is potentially lost for the most important week of the year so far. There hasn't been official confirmation. I'm assuming that he's going to be out. Now, the bright side of this is that for those of you who play on Sleeper, for example, and Sleeper has an ineptitude as far as, coming to proper IDP designations, James Williams may be able to put his defensive back eligibility to use this week, since he played 100% of snaps once Cedric Gray left the game. So maybe even just for games, Williams can be, that maybe even channel that elite efficiency of our beloved Cedric the Gray, because we know it won't be Cody Barton, but James Williams, if you're on sleeper, especially, like I'd be happy to plug him in to a DB spot this week in what's been a neutral matchup for linebacker. Tackles, we're going to assume that he's going to be playing a full-time role. So for Tennessee's defensive backs, Cedric the Gray missing this week to return in the championship week as Cedric the White. Very nice. I like that. Yeah, let's hope so. We gotta survive this week without him first. But like you said, it should only be a 1 week absence. Tennessee's defensive backs. Yeah, we lost Kevin Winston Jr. He's on IR now. He had been awesome with his opportunities, but of course got hurt early last week, hurt our IDP lineups because of that as well. So now it's Amani Hooker and Kendall Brooks. I don't know how many of you have the sand to start either of these guys in the semifinals, but if you do, it's at least an above average matchup, and I do hope it works out for you. And then Tennessee's defensive line. So we got some Jeffrey Simmons questions here. Jeffrey Simmons, all of a sudden gets an improved pass rush matchup here since Patrick Mahomes is out, right? Simmons has been awesome all year long, even scored an offensive touchdown last week. Maybe he gets a defensive one for us this week. But Jeff asks, appreciate all your work, John. Would you start Jeffrey Simmons or Danielle Hunter at defensive line this week? So good question. I got Danielle Hunter this week. So as much as I like this matchup more for Jeffrey Simmons, Danielle Hunter gets Bonnie part 2 with Kenny Pickett, but the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line. So we'll talk about them. I expect that Houston defensive line to absolutely deliver this week. God King Simmons will save me in week 16. Yes, Michael Bianco. If you got Jeffrey Simmons, for the most part, you're starting him, but like there's definitely a few guys that I do prefer this week just because of the matchups and again, talent as well. Like Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter should cook. Nobody's benching Myles Garrett right now. So those are some of the few options that I would consider over Jeffrey Simmons. But yeah. All right. Who's the replacement for Kevin Winston? Yeah. So this is Kendall Brooks, right? He's most likely going to play the slot role for Tennessee. That's where Winston has been playing. I worry that we're not going to get a full-time role from anybody there. It's possible. Marcus Harris did play quite a bit in the slot, so he'd probably be the best bet if you really do need desperate help there at DB and you're looking at the Tennessee matchup. So Marcus Harris is likely to play more in the slot than maybe anybody else on the Titans. It's really risky though. So really Kendall Brooks, I would expect to play the most at safety. He's probably very widely available for the most part in your league. So if you need to take a shot on somebody, then Kendall Brooks or $5 money hooker could be an option. All right, let's see. Any other related questions here? So, yeah, Go Beers has Cedric Gray. Yeah, so I don't think Cedric Gray is going to play, unfortunately. We just haven't seen that this year where a guy gets concussion one week and then plays the next. So we're going to work off the information that we're going to assume he's not playing. So if he is, then yeah, you could put him over Foye, but I think Foye and Dodson are the safe options here. All right. Okay, Karen Bird does ask Danielle Hunter, Benito. Well, actually, we'll save this one. Yeah, I'll try to start starring some of the ones. I think that might help me a little bit as well to know which ones we'll talk about in a little bit. VAR Virus, you got Cedric Gray in here. Need 3. Let's see. Demetrius Knight, Wagner, TJ Edwards, Pratt, Cedric Gray. Okay, so Overshown, Wagner, TJ Edwards for me this week. Hope that helps. Good luck. All right, let's go to Tampa Bay and Carolina next. So Tampa Bay linebackers, we will see if Servase Dennis is back this week because Deion Jones did fill in last week. He was not a full-time player though. So in Servase Dennis's absence, the Bucs also did sign Anthony Walker Jr. off the Colts practice squad. So that it doesn't necessarily bode well for Dennis's availability. I could be wrong, but it says something too maybe about how they feel about Deion Jones. Walker was with the Bucs this offseason before they released him. So he has some familiarity there at the very least. it's a below average matchup this week. I would not F with the Bucs linebacker too. Just go with Levante David, but even he has been terribly ineffective all year. So not high hopes for him either. Tampa Bay's defensive backs. Yeah, we'll have to wait a little bit on to see what Tyke Smith's availability is. If he's good to go, then yeah, for the most part, we're starting him unless you have like a Nick Emanwari or somebody like that. We've talked about some of the other options already in start sit questions, but if Tyke isn't good to go, then Izzy can be a play in a positive matchup here. Winfield definitely playable as usual. Nothing new there with Antoine Winfield. Tampa Bay's defensive line. Bryce Young, he does continue to be decent at avoiding sacks this year, which always makes things tougher. So it doesn't feel like a great Yaya Diaby or Hassan Reddick streaming week this week. It's not the worst matchup in the world if you have to, but for the most part, I'd probably be looking elsewhere. Carolina. Their defensive line, not a great matchup for this group either, unfortunately. I know DJ Wanham got a couple sacks last week. We talked about him being kind of a volume-based streaming option, which is usually dependent on good matchups, and this one isn't great. So Baker Mayfield has been doing a really good job at avoiding sacks, and he'll also see a mix of Tristan Wirfs and Luka Decky. DJ Wanham will. So I don't really trust this group as a whole. They did a nice job in a positive matchup last week, but not expecting that to be a consistent thing here for them in week 16. Carolina's linebackers, Trevin Wallace, Christian Roseboom back starting together at linebacker after some injury-filled weeks for them. Wallace resumed the 100% snap role, Roseboom in the part-time role. You know what it is. Wallace just a low-end full-time linebacker option for IDP. Roseboom more for deeper formats. Carolina's DBs, somehow Nick Scott ended up with a 10-tackle game. He's been surprisingly effective lately, even with the less ideal role compared to Trayvon Merrick. Like, I'm okay with either guy as a starter if you need them, since at least a slightly above average matchup for safety tackles. I'm still going to prefer Merrick because of the usage, but Scott has at least put himself in play recently with his production. Bruggs asks, Drew Tranquil or Nick Scott? So I'm usually going to give the edge to linebacker there. I'm going to say Drew Tranquil. He's still playing around 90% of the snaps. Yeah, I'm going to go Drew Tranquil this week. I know the matchup wasn't great. We did talk about it. Matchup just kind of average here for Scott. I'll go Tranquil this week. Lujar, go with Barrett Carter or James Williams if no Cedric Gray. I would take a shot on James Williams this week. Like we talked about with Barrett Carter, just been really ineffective for unfortunately. So it's become harder to trust them. So I'm going to take a shot on James Williams. Hope that again he could channel the Cedric Gray efficiency. Would you use James Williams as a replacement for Gray or Sherwood? So that's a good question. I can actually answer that one via the rankings, who I have ahead here. So Sherwood is probably my answer. Yeah, still gave the edge to Jamie Sherwood this week. So that's where I would go. Playing in a league where we're all just figuring out IDP. So this is MDLC. Only have one flex spot for each team. Sacks and tackles, both pretty point heavy. Start Jeffrey Simmons or Jack Campbell. So yeah, both definitely options. If tackles are heavy scoring, even with sacks also being heavy scoring, I'm going to give the edge to linebacker there. Say Jack Campbell. At the very least, you should have yourself a decent floor for production. Any other big plays he gets is just a bonus there. So in a week like this, obviously where we want points, I wouldn't risk unless you're chasing. Like Jeffrey Simmons probably has a little bit more upside, but I think Jack Campbell is the better play this week. Since Gray probably misses, do you like Tremaine Edmonds if activated? Yeah, we talked about Tremaine Edmonds. Just basically, there's a little bit of risk there in that he's probably going to be eased in, or not probably. There's a chance that he's eased in because they did do that with TJ Edwards. But in a good matchup, I would like Tremaine Edmonds in a spot like that if he's activated. I don't feel terrified to play him. I guess it's just a little bit riskier. Will Jalen Phillips get home? Have him and Abdul Carter starring over Ezraku, Yaya, and Herbig. So yeah, Jalen Phillips. I mean, it's a better matchup this week against Washington and Mariota. He's definitely due. He's been playing well. He's been playing enough. But I do agree that that's probably the order that I'd have those guys in this week. trust Tyke this week or Petrie instead. So those two are very close for me. That much I know. I got Tyke Smith this week. If he's in, I'm going to play him over Jalen Petrie. Oops, something happened there. We already got that one. Ed Khalil, thank you very much for the $2 super chat. That's very kind of you. Sweat or Sealer at I'm assuming that's Tavondre Sweat since you're talking defensive tackle. So I would go Zach Sealer this week. He's been really solid recently. He's been picking it up, and it gets a decent enough matchup against the Bengals. So Zach Sealer would be the play for me. Wallbang, Tyke or Merrick. So I have Tyke. I have Tyke a little bit ahead of Merrick this week. James Williams being a good, Jiff. James Williams being a good DB option, but over Tyke or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Not necessarily over those two. Those two are probably going to be higher for me. I'll say the other two for now. Williams isn't far behind. Like, he's probably in that fringe top 12 range, but those guys are in the middle to high end range of DB1. We haven't covered those teams yet, so I'll wait. We haven't covered there yet. Tyke Smith full practice Wednesday, so that's a good sign. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, that's huge. Obviously, if Tyke's had already a full practice, as long as he doesn't have a setback, we're expecting him to play. Love it. All right, let's keep it going. I'll star these ones so we can get back to them later. Make sure that I didn't go over any of the other star ones. Good. All right, Jets and Saints are up next. We'll go with the Jets linebackers. There's been a few questions. Jamie Sure gives Mewood and Quincy Williams. They don't get a great matchup here against the Saints. The good thing with Sherwood, he's obviously the preferred option. He's been more effective than Quincy Williams this year. So in a matchup like this, I definitely prefer Jamie and Sherwood over Quincy Williams. Just Williams has been an inefficient tackler plus a poor matchup. I'm never overly excited about these situations, obviously. So hopefully you have a good Quincy pivot if he's been in your lineup somehow. Giants defense or Jets defensive backs, the rookie Malachi Moore. So he's been really solid, getting ideal usage, and he's produced for IDP as a result. Like, he has, I think, earned his way into starting consideration. 26 tackles over his last 3 games. We obviously love that for any safety, and even in a neutral matchup this week, like, I'd consider him in that safety 2 range. Tony Adams is the other safety. He picked up an injury last week. He was replaced by Dean Clark. So if Adams misses time, then Dean Clark is kind of your replacement option, really, for like the deep D-Gen league. So he should at least benefit from the Jets' beneficial safety deployment. But for the most part, I'm going to go with Malachi Moore. And then Brandon Stevens, also a solid CP required option again this week in a good matchup. The Wilsiak Jets got to get a pick at some point. It definitely feels like it. And look, Tyler Shuck, I think, could maybe provide that for them. We'll see. But the law of averages would say that we got a good shot at getting there maybe this week. Jets defensive line, it is a good pass rush matchup here. We even saw that Carolina defensive line take advantage of New Orleans last week. So Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson at least enter like streaming territory this week if you need help. If you lost Micah Parsons, for example, depending on who else is available, these are probably the kinds of matchups that I'd be looking at over the next 2 weeks to kind of fill that void, and hopefully you hit big there. Jake Wilsiak calling the Malachi Moore pick this week. I like it. I like it. All right, Saints defensive line. So Chase Young is kind of the lone option here on this defensive line. A good matchup, at least. It means he could potentially keep his strong year going. I wrote about it in the IDP report this week, but he is currently in the midst of a career year in terms of PFF pass rush grade. He owns an 83.9 pass rush grade so far, and he's just 1.5 sacks shy from matching his career high of 7.5 sacks in a season. So I think that's even more impressive considering he missed a massive chunk of the early part of the year. So a little resurgent year here for Chase Young. No idea who will be at quarterback for the Jets right now. I don't know if you guys have seen any news, whether it's Tyrod Taylor or Brady Cook or Justin Fields again, but let's be honest, they're the same picture. It doesn't change all that much for our pass rushers here. Still a good matchup. New Orleans linebackers, neutral matchup for Demario Davis, so still a fine option. He's a 100% player. Pete Werner continues to hover around 60% or lower, so really a deep league option. So we're getting news. Brady Cook is going to be the starter. Yeah. So it's a good pass rush matchup if Brady Cook is in there. So appreciate that, guys. Thank you for that heads up. New Orleans defensive backs, below average matchup here for Jonas Sanker and either Justin Reed or Jordan Howden, depending on who's available. Not particularly excited about either player this week. I might treat this one as more of an Alontae Taylor only type matchup. All right. Let's see. I think we're kind of caught up. Ben, no, that's okay. Ben, you don't have to apologize for not being here on time for the live show. I appreciate you tuning in at all. Definitely your kid who is sick right now takes priority over this. So do not apologize ever for something like that. Let's see. We haven't covered Tyke or Hufanga in a game yet. Riley Moss or Alontae Taylor. We can cover that one. So again, I'll reference my rankings really quick. But I believe I have Alontae Taylor this week. Yeah, he's just been a dog. So Alontae Taylor is the one that I like this week. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, Jim Bob, Simmons, Benito, Jones, Landman. Let me know which. Yeah, that's okay. Ben Hartley already got us with which Jones. Yeah, let me know which Jones. I'm assuming Chris Jones, maybe. I don't know, because Landman is in there as well, so it could be Ernest Jones. Yeah, just clarify which players, and we'll get to that one in a little bit. Tranquil over Dennis. Oops. Yeah, I would put Drew Tranquil probably over Servassier Dennis this week. Good stuff. All right, Chargers and Dallas is up next. Let's start with the Chargers defensive backs because, yeah, we got to start with King Derwin. I kind of alluded to him being due for a big game last week since he's been so quiet lately, and he delivered a big game. Now, this was also on the heels of me saying that he's not a locked-in starter anymore as his production was sliding. And I don't know if I feel like that he's completely back to that locked in range. Even still, like, he's a good option for sure because his usage, it still remains ideal, which includes time in the slot, and getting the Dallas Cowboys this week means that he could eat into that really nice cornerback tackle opportunity that Dak and company have provided for us. So I obviously like Derwin James. As far as the rest of the Chargers DBs, it has been kind of a complete mess to sort out recently. It's been all over the place as we with scheme changes and injuries and rotations. So these are the kind of situations that become even riskier. So really it's just Derwin James as the primary option for me by a pretty wide margin this week. Chargers linebackers. So Diane Henley, he kind of salvaged another shit tackle game with a pick this past week, but man, like, he still can't put together a great tackle game. He'll have a shot this week in a good matchup, at least. Like, if you're one of those rosters that has kind of been stuck with Henley this year, it's at least a better matchup. And then Denzel Perriman, purely for deeper leagues. He only played 51% of snaps last week, Denzel Perriman. So keep that in mind with him. Chargers defensive line. So Tuli, 2 sacks, Tui Pelotu. He hit big last week, doing so in a tough matchup with both sacks coming against Patrick Mahomes as well. So it will be another tough quarterback to take down this week for Tuli because Dak has been so good, among the best in the league in terms of pressure to sack conversion rate. So Tuli is still in that edge 2 range though for me this week. Khalil Mack also kind of in that similar kind of range. Odafe Owe also clearly hates being compared to Quina from Final Fantasy 9. So I guess we'll bump him back up to Kamari on the Final Fantasy party member depth chart. It's the least we can do after a 2-sack game. He has all 7 of his sacks this year with the Chargers. He's doing it on a limited opportunities, playing well behind Tuli and Max. So that's nice to see. But really, like, the deepest of leagues is the only leagues where we're starting Tui Pelotu. Yeah, we got some other questions that'll relate to this game, so I'll get to those after we cover Dallas here. Dallas's linebackers. Yeah, we got to start here because we finally got back a near full-time linebacker in Dallas for the first time since their bye week, and that is obviously DeMarvion Overshown. As expected, he played 93% of snaps last week. Kenneth Murray and Logan Wilson continued kind of their musical chairs routine. So Overshown, definitely an option again in a larger range of leagues, getting a decent matchup against the Chargers, who are 7th in tackles per game to the linebacker position. So I do like DeMarvion Overshown, and then Wilson and Murray. Like, we'll continue to just mostly avoid these guys. Dallas' defensive line, it is a nice pass rush matchup here for the Cowboys D-line. Unfortunately, our best option from the bunch, Quinnen Williams for DT required leagues, he picked up a concussion last week. Luckily, he got an interception before he left, but he's now likely to miss this week as well, which is a nice pass rush opportunity. So we'll look at Osa Odigizua as a potential streaming defensive tackle, Ezraku and Jadeveon Clowney, the deep league streaming options on the edge. We just know how bad the Chargers offensive line has been at protecting Justin Herbert this year. So those are kind of our best bets to get home this week. And then Dallas's defensive back, slightly better matchup for Deron Bland last week after a poor matchup. He can get back in starting territory for CB required leagues. And then the safeties, I'm just not messing around too much if you don't have to with, Donovan Wilson or Malik Hooker. Okay. A few more questions here. I'll check the starred ones first. Okay, those ones aren't relevant just yet. Henley or Barrett Carter? Man. All right, let's see. Carter, I got there. Henley, I got Henley as a slight edge this week. I know it feels gross. Both guys have been kind of gross though. Diane Henley, we just talked about it, right? It is at least a good matchup this week. So that is what gave him the edge for me in the lineup this week. So I would go Henley. Really just got to hope that he makes up for last year's fantasy playoff debacle, putting up a goose egg in the final week of the season. But I think that's probably where I would go is Diane Henley. Wallbang, Thule, Highsmith, Pierce, or Latu. Got to start two. So I know Highsmith I usually have high, so he's going to be in there. I always like Highsmith. I think he's always got some potential as long as he's healthy. And then the other spot I believe I have as Thule this week. Yeah, that other spot is Thule Tuipulotu. So Thule and Highsmith are my guys this week that I would go with. Start 3DL. So the bigger ones with like a ton of players in them, guys. I do apologize, Ben Hartley. Just put that one in the VOD because I'll get a chance to look at it in a little bit more detail. That way I don't spend a ton of time searching through the ranks and stuff live on stream, even though we've already done that quite a bit. We're trying to limit it a little bit. Ben asks, Geno Stone, Belton, Winfield, Derwin James, Baker. Waivers are deep. Yeah, if you just need one, this week, I have Buda Baker, the highest against Atlanta. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, let's see. Diane Henley has been worse than pineapple on pizza for my leagues. Yeah, he has been a big disappointment this year. It's been kind of shocking how ineffective he's been, but nice matchup at the very least. So got to hope that he gets through. Lost Cedric Gray. Should I drop Ernest Jones for Jeffrey Simmons? It depends on scoring. If you're in a tackle-heavy league, I'd probably still lean the linebacker there. Big play scoring, I would take a shot on Jeffrey Simmons in a matchup like this. Hilltop. Thule or Walter Nolan. Yeah, we'll talk about Walter Nolan in a bit, but Thule Tuipulotu has the edge in the ranks for me. Yeah, super gross. I hear you. Heath. It's just not good. Henley versus Carter is like two big girls at the I maybe should read these before I put them out there, but yeah, I appreciate the the thought. Henley, yeah, he did have a nice start. Let's see. Awesome. Okay, Rico. No offense questions. Cedric Gray, Wagner, Crosby, Chin. Yeah, Scott too. Like someone like Cedric Gray is unlikely to play. I wouldn't put too much stock in the Wednesday practice reports because a lot of especially veterans too get a lot of rest days on Wednesday, so that creates the questionable tag. Thursday, Friday definitely more important. So hopefully those guys are good to go for you, and it's nothing. Demario Davis versus the Jets or Alex Highsmith versus Detroit. I probably have Highsmith there this week. Okay. Moving on to Minnesota and the New York Giants. Minnesota's defensive line. So Jonathan Grenard, he is done for the year, which means that one of our rare edge handcuffs kind of comes back into play in the form of Dallas Turner. So the Giants are not just a workable pass rush matchup, but they've also been a really good tackle matchup for our opposing defensive linemen. So I really like Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel this week in like tackle heavy scoring specifically. We know they're not elite pass rushers, but they'll definitely rack up some tackles thanks to a ton of playing time and good usage there. So both of those guys are options this week. Minnesota's linebackers, great matchup for the Vikings linebackers, Blake Cashman, Eric Wilson. Wilson can definitely benefit from the D-line tackle opportunity stuff as well, since he gets a good amount of work on the edge and rushing the passer. Obviously, both guys should be able to benefit from the prime linebacker tackle opportunities, so both will definitely be in play this week. They've been rock solid for us. So, hopefully they don't let us down now. And then Minnesota's defensive backs, Josh Metellus landed on injured reserve, so he's done for the year. Last week too, it seemed like the team basically straight up benched Theo Jackson. So Jay Ward is the next man up. It's not a great matchup by any means, though. So I would likely try to avoid this one if possible, just because we don't know if they'll go back to Theo Jackson. We don't know if they'll stick with Jay Ward, and we don't need to risk it in a bad matchup. So same thing with Harrison Smith, really. We could look to pivot if possible, if you have some other options. And then the Giants defensive line, the big question is, can Abdul Carter continue his positive sack regression parade against JJ McCarthy? He had a great game last week. That's 2 weeks in a row now with a sack. So the positive regression gods, they do owe us more. So we'll see if he can keep it going, because he looked dominant last week. He played 80% of the snaps, posted a 90.6 pass rush grade with a sack, forced fumble recovery, 7 total tackles, baller type shit from Abdul Carter. So he is one of those guys that I would feel good about pivoting to if needed this week. So if you really do need the option and you have him available to you, he is one of the better pivot options this week. I know he hasn't been a starter all year long. So Brian Burns, he has cooled off quite a bit recently. 3 straight games without a sack for him. I'd say he's definitely due. Would be a good time for him to deliver, obviously, in a nice matchup, and should still be in lineups. Brian Burns. Giants linebackers, so not a great matchup here for Bobby Okereke and Mawasau. Okereke is fine if you need him, but Darius Mawasau is only for deep leagues. He played 80% of the snaps in his return last week. That's unlikely to change that snap share. So as long as Bobby Okereke is active, that is. So I would treat Mawasau more as the deep league option. Giants defensive back. So Dane Belton, he also had a great game last week, really doing what we hoped Tyler Nubin could do this season and just hasn't. The problem here is that Tyler Nubin and Dane Belton continue to share snaps enough where it's riskier trusting them in an awful matchup this week, right? I would not play any of the Giants safeties. Sure, it could work out, but just consider that the Vikings are allowing the fewest tackles per game to opposing safeties, and Nubin and Belton both played fewer than 3/4 of the defensive snaps last week, thanks to some rotation shenanigans, which has been the case the past 2 weeks. So again, in a situation like this, in round 2 of the fantasy playoffs, we're looking to avoid goose eggs. This is one of those potentially disastrous situations. So not loving their odds basically this week. Okay. I'll try to answer a few more and then we'll get on to the later slate games. Karen, Daniel Hunter, Nick Bonito, TJ Watt, if I had to pick one. So I think it's Daniel Hunter for me this week. D. Alford or Kamari Lassiter from Dash. Ooh, good question. I will look at my rankings for that one. D. Alford, Sweet D, and who was the other one? Lassiter. I've got Sweet D this week. Going against Arizona. We'll talk about that literally in a second, so I probably could have saved it, but I do like Sweet D. Alford. Let's see. The real Gurr, would you be comfortable replacing Ernest Jones in a flex for Tyke Smith? Yeah, it's not the best matchup, obviously, for Jones. We talked about that. The Rams are not giving up a lot to the linebacker position, but it's close, right? Because even in bad matchups, linebackers still probably more likely to rack up tackles than safeties in like a neutral matchup. So it's very, very close. If you're not feeling it, if you have any concern about Tyke Smith being eased in or anything like that, then yeah, I'd be fine pivoting if you're not feeling it. But either way, I think both guys should be fine starters. And then Oh, here we go. Last one. Phillips and Abdul Carter starting over Ezraku, Yaga, Herbig, Tillmore, not more Watt news. I can't remember if I answered this one or not. I'll just really quickly. Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fine play this week. Okay. Let's see. Before we go on, oh man, a bunch more came in here that I did not see. Let's see. Overshown or Caden Ellis this week. I believe I have Overshown. No, I think I have Caden Ellis. Yeah, I do have Caden Ellis. I like the matchup more. Yeah. Evan Smith, appreciate you. Very nice of you. All right. Any tips for finding people for IDP? I might lose a guy or two this summer. So I honestly, Scott, one of the best places that I found was League Safe. They have like a message board type thing where they post league openings and stuff like that. So that's kind of the place where I would post your league and say, you know, we're looking for a guy. Here's the league scoring and all that kind of stuff. And that might be the best place to do it. So other than that, like, you know, just posting on Twitter, tag at my fantasy league as well. And they'll probably retweet you and you might get a few more eyes on it as well. Jake Cedric Gray with DNP on Wednesday. Yeah, I would say he's basically out as well. Lost Gray, Barrett Carter. Okay, Lost Gray, Barrett Carter, Knight D, or Servassier. So this week, yeah, it's probably Barrett Carter. Safest bet for snaps, at least. Yeah, I know he hasn't been efficient lately, but at least his season as a whole has been more effective than Knight D and Servassier. And then you also have Jonathan Cooper or Redmond. I think I have Cooper this week. I want to say it's probably close. This is not a great matchup for Cooper, that much I know. It's not too bad. Slight edge to Jonathan Cooper this week. Blake Cashman or Eric Wilson, 1.5 point for tackles. So yeah, it's close. I'm giving the edge to Blake Cashman just because of the usage. And a few Blake Cashman questions here. Where's Cashman in the ranks? Cashman's LB3. So again, really nice matchup for linebacker tackles. It's good for both him and Wilson. Wilson, if you're looking to shoot for upside, he's going to get a little bit more pass rush opportunity, but probably less of a tackle floor. So that's typically the way I've treated them this year. So I'm going to go Cashman. Metellus out. Should I start Dallas Turner or Cam Bynum? Yeah, Cam Bynum has a good matchup. I would probably take an upside swing on Dallas Turner in a good matchup against the Giants. There's at least some tackle opportunities there. I'll pull up the matchup board here, but probably Dallas Turner for me if I had to choose. Okay, flex Xavier Watts, Sherwood, or Barrett Carter. I would go Sherwood this week. Great. Yeah, we just talked about it. Looks like he's in danger. Emanwari, we talked about him. He's DB1 for me right now. Basically going forward, he is. So I would go Nick Emanwari. Yeah, 1 week minimum. Cashman, Eric Wilson. Okay, look, Wilziak, as Mr. Scott, you got potential fill-in option right there. Landman, Patrick Queen, or Levante. Landman for sure. Prefer Landman there, Karen. Another one from Dr. Dave in a former life, Scott. So there you go. Couple options right away. Tobias Bolden, best IDP show on the net right now. Appreciate all your time, hard work you put into this. Happy I made the live show. I'm going to enjoy the show and ask my questions later because I'm at work. I appreciate you, Tobias. That's very kind of you. Guys, the support all year long has been amazing. I really can't thank you guys enough. So thank you so much. And then one more question here, Abdul Carter or Barrett Carter from MK. Yeah, it's going to depend on scoring. If sacks are nerfed by any means in your scoring, then I probably wouldn't go Abdul Carter. But I think if all things are equal, if you have decent scoring for sacks, I'm going to take a shot on Abdul Carter this week because he's been awesome. And Barrett Carter can kick rocks after last week. All right, one more, Jack. No, thanks for the great content this season. Best IDP. Thank you, guys. You're a bunch of flatterers, and I appreciate you. I can't thank you enough for the support. It's very kind. So thank you. All right. We're going to go on to the 4:00 games here in just a second. I'll start a couple more questions that I didn't get to, but I will let you know that our game plan of the week is presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. So If you're listening/watching this episode, then you're in the fantasy football playoffs. Obviously, you need to lock in a game plan to finish the season strong and ultimately finish with a fantasy championship. And when it comes to the fantasy playoffs, the ultimate game plan is preparation, making sure no stone is left unturned, making sure you're prepared for as much as we can, whether it's the right streaming options, players to avoid, knowing your pivot options, all of the top-notch preparation that can help you secure that illustrious fantasy championship. So that's what our game plan is at this point in the year. But you too should make sure you have your own game plan, whether for fantasy playoffs or life in general. Just like every team win starts with a great game plan, your future should too. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing tomorrow is covered. Whether you're just starting out building your dynasty or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. Visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. All right, let's get into the later games now. I'll star a couple more questions here that I did not answer, and we will get to them very shortly. But next game is Atlanta and Arizona. So we'll start with the Atlanta defensive line because James Pierce Jr. is on a 6-game sack streak. He picked up 2 more sacks in week 15. He's got 8 sacks on the year, really starting to put himself in starting range for IDP, right? There's still some risk because, the pass rush metrics haven't been amazing. That sack streak is going to come to an end at some point, but he's been we knew this coming into the year that he was one of the better bets from this rookie class to hit the ground running in the NFL. And he kind of took a little bit to get his footing, but in the back half of this season, he has absolutely done just that. So doesn't have overly encouraging pass rush metrics. He sits at 54th among edge rushers in pass rush grade with a 65.7. He's just found a way to finish. That's been the key. And honestly, that's IDP managers, what we really care about, especially in season while it's happening, right? So he's going to line up against both Arizona offensive tackles. That it's Kelvin Beachum and Josh Fryer. Both of those guys have struggled in pass protection this year. Jacoby Brissett also averaging over 3 sacks per game against as a starter. So there's room for Pierce to keep the streak going. He's become a fringe starting IDP option for me this week. And really, he's the only one. I'm not going to start Jalen Walker just yet, and then anybody else on that among the NPCs of the Atlanta defensive line. Atlanta's linebackers, though, Divine Diablo, Caden Ellis, they get a really nice matchup this week against the Cardinals. I continue to prefer Divine Diablo if you have the choice, but both guys really are in a solid spot and definitely startable. And then Atlanta's defensive backs, Jesse Bates, Xavier Watts, unfortunately get a rubbish matchup this week. It's a bit surprising considering how much the Cards have had to pass the ball with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, but it's actually been the cornerbacks who have benefited. So Sweet D Alford, we talked about him in a start-sit question from earlier. He's definitely a fine option this week. He will come off a little bit in non-11 personnel situations, so he might get a little time against Trey McBride to help that, but probably not enough to create an every down role. So if I had to guess, I'd say he's probably around 70% of the snaps this week, D. Alford, but a nice matchup if you're looking for a potential streamer. All right, Arizona's linebackers. The Cardinals situation for the linebackers has been a bit in flux in recent weeks, I would say, right? Week 14, the team appeared to demote Akeem Davis-Gaither for Owen Papo, only to then give Akeem Davis-Gaither his LB2 role back last week in week 15. And that led him to moving into LB1 once Cody Simon got hurt and did not return to the game. So adding to the situation this week, Mac Wilson is eligible to return from injured reserve, though it's not a guarantee that he'll be back. I haven't seen anything significant there. But if Mac Wilson were to return, IDP managers, I think, we can kind of assume that he's going to regain his LB1 role in that defense. But until then, that role still likely belongs to Cody Simon if he's healthy. If Simon misses this week as well, then Akeem Davis-Gaither would move into a likely every down role, basically kind of increasing his value. It would push Owen Papo into a part-time LB2 role. So obviously this is a lot to kind of keep an eye on, but just be on the lookout for who's available and who's not. Remember the pecking order, basically Mac Wilson, Cody Simon, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and then Owen Papo. All right, DBs, For Arizona, great matchup for Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson this week. Actually, we'll see if Jalen Thompson is back or not. He missed last game, was replaced by a combination of Darren Hall and Kitan Crawford. Neither of those guys played an every down role. So we'll ignore the safety 2 role in Arizona if Jalen Thompson is out this week. Garrett Williams, another strong streaming option this week in a good cornerback tackle matchup. I like him. He's one of the few primary slot defender cornerbacks who will stay on the field for 100% of snaps regardless of matchup. So that definitely helps. And then Arizona's defensive line, Walter Nolan for DT required leagues. He's been like uber productive whenever he's on the field. He's missed a ton of time this year, but whenever he's out there, he's basically giving us something for IDP. He played 61% of snaps last week. That was actually the most among any Cardinals defensive lineman. Picked up a sack, strong overall pass rush performance from Walter Nolan. So like to see that from him. It's not a great matchup, obviously, if you're, but if you're in a tough spot at defensive tackle, then I'd be fine taking a swing on him in those deeper DT required leagues. As for Josh Sweat, also a tough matchup for him, and his playing time dipped a little bit last week. They went back to that kind of heavy rotation. So Josh Sweat, kind of a lower end starting option for me this week for sure. Okay. Let's see. Boltar, the Pirate. Nice. Thank you. Who would you drop? Geno Stone, Budda Baker, or Eminwari? Wow. So if you're going to drop somebody, you got really great options there. I'm not dropping Eminwari. I like the matchup too much for Budda Baker this week. It's tough, but it probably Geno Stone. Think there'll be a little bit more inconsistency there. So that one's answered. 1DB, Tyke Smith, CJ Gardner-Johnson, D. Alford, or Malik Mustafa. I believe I have, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this week. Really, it's him and Tyke Smith. They're right beside each other. So Tyke looks like he's going to play. If you're feeling him more than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I'd be fine to make that pivot if you'd like. Gonna watch the full show after my record. Need to know who to start, Tyke Smith or Nick Eminwari. Nick Eminwari, he's been locked in, so he's my DB1 this week. So the answer to all Eminwari questions right now is Eminwari. Same thing here, Chin or Eminwari, Winfield or Eminwari. Hopefully he delivers for us on Thursday night. I know, short week. We'll find out very soon if he's going to hit for us, but it's been hard to doubt him this year, just considering the usage, considering the production. He's been so damn good. Does it make sense to go Budda Baker over Tyke Smith from the Very Sexy Muffin? Love that nickname. Both have good matchups. So you can absolutely do that. Again, I have those guys super close in the rankings. I have Budda Baker a little bit ahead. So yeah, that would be the option that I would go with, but it's so close that if you don't trust Budda or you prefer Tyke, then yeah, you can definitely make that switch. But I do have Budda Baker a little bit ahead this week. All right, and I will start this one. Actually, no, I will put this one out because it's got James Pierce in there. Would you start Pierce or Hunter over Crosby? So I would start Danielle Hunter over Crosby. That is the one player that I know I have ahead of Max Crosby. Max Crosby's still high in the ranks, but it's just the matchup against the Raiders. Kenny Pickett at quarterback, that Raiders offensive line has been a complete mess. So Danielle Hunter, I'm expecting him to cook this week. Not that I don't expect Max Crosby to, but you got to choose one of these elite options. It's really hard. I gave the edge to Danielle Hunter this week. Good luck. All right. I'll start that one. Save it for later there. Ben, let's go on to Jacksonville and Denver next. So we'll start with Jacksonville's defensive line. So this is a tough matchup for Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. The Broncos are the best pass blocking unit in the league. Bo Nix, super elusive when it comes to being able to take him down for sacks. So Josh Hines-Allen, he is startable based on talent, but basically lower end of the starting spectrum this week among the edge rushers. And then Trayvon Walker, even lower than that. He's been more of a volume dependent play. So if he's going to overcome the matchup, it's probably not because he's going to be an elite pass rusher or anything like that, where Josh Hines-Allen at least has that ability in him. Jacksonville's linebackers, neutral matchup here for Foye and Devin Lloyd. And lately, they've been blowing teams out. So garbage time has really cut down on their playing time. But they should avoid the garbage time stuff this week in what I'd imagine is a closer matchup, right? So Foye, definitely good to go. Devin Lloyd, still not a full-time linebacker, but he is playable in those non-shallow leagues, basically. But I wouldn't be playing him over 100% snap linebackers, basically. And then Jaguars defensive backs, they rotated their safeties a little bit this past week, which basically none of them exceeded 80% of snaps before garbage time. So it is a good matchup. So I'm fine taking a shot on one of them as a streaming option in deeper leagues this week, but none of them are locked in options, if that makes sense. Also, the cornerbacks were rotating like crazy as well, with Greg Newsome, Jerry Jones, Jordan Lewis as well. So they're all risky plays in a really good matchup, which is the hard part. Like, I still don't mind Jordan Lewis if you're desperate, but there's absolutely risk there if he's not going to be a full-time player. So just something to keep in mind. Denver, their defensive back. So Brandon Jones got placed on injured reserve this week. So PJ Locke, he will step into a starting role in time for really a prime tackle matchup against the Jaguars, right? They are yielding the third most tackles per game to the safety position this year. So PJ Locke, he played 100% of the snaps when Brandon Jones was out of the game last week. About a quarter of his snaps were in the box. So he'll be a good streaming option this week, potentially next week as well for IDP managers in need. Talanoa Hufanga definitely locked in for lineups this week. He's been great all season. Like, unless you have Eminwari or Nick Cross, like those are basically the only two guys that I'm starting over Hufanga this week. But really like PJ Locke quite a bit, as well as a potential guy to grab and start if you need him. Denver's linebackers, our guy Kingleton, he gets a poor matchup this week. So I have sadly had to move him to kind of like the low end LB2 this week. He's obviously one of the stronger bets to overcome a matchup like this. So he's still playable in those non-shallow leagues. But yeah, like I said, low end LB2 this week. And then Dre Greenlaw, less so basically as a part-time linebacker. Denver's defensive line, Nick Bonito, Zach Allen. I don't think these guys are leaving our lineups at this point. I know this isn't the best matchup, but we're just going to bet on talent to overcome, because they have done that most weeks, and depending on your other options as well, obviously. But I do continue to start Nick Bonito, Zach Allen every single week. Jonathan Cooper, also fine, but more in that fringe kind of edge 2 range where I have him. All right, we got a few more questions there. One is offense. We're not going to answer any offense questions. We'll refer to Nate's rankings. This is for the IDP crowd. Very sexy muffin. Appreciate you. All right, Brian Burns, Will Anderson, or Myles Garrett in my IDP flex. Holy guacamole. Yeah, you got some options there, man. Look, Myles Garrett is my DL1. Pretty much every week now going forward. We know that he's chasing that sack streak. He is an unstoppable wrecking ball. I can't take him out, but you also have Will Anderson against the Raiders. We're going to talk about that matchup in a second. Like, it's a much better matchup than against the Bills. So if you really do want to make that pivot, you can. Personally, I'm going to trust Myles Garrett just as literally the best pass rusher in the NFL right now. So yeah, that's where I would go. Jordan Brooks looked great for the Dolphins on Monday, despite the circus in Miami. Yeah, Scott, Jordan Brooks has been unreal this year. The guy's just been, he's LB1, right? On the year for IDP. So he just continues to cook. He's just somebody that is not going to leave our lineups either. He's been amazing. Let's see. Daniel Vincent, need to. Tyke Smith, Malachi Moore, Malik Mustafa, tackle heavy league. So Tyke Smith is in. The other one for me is Malachi Moore. We talked about him earlier. He's been excellent. Nice matchup. Good usage. I like Malachi Moore. I think I answered this one, Karen. It's okay if you missed it, though. Daniel Hunter, Bonito, or Watt, if you had to pick one. So I went with Daniel Hunter just because of the matchup. It's really close because Bonito has been amazing. TJ Watt, I don't know if he's going to play or not. We're going to talk about him in just a second, but I probably like Daniel Hunter just because of a prime matchup. Yeah, and then Joe House. Yeah, TJ Edwards played 100% of snaps last week. Tremaine Edmonds coming off IR potentially this week. I don't think that's really going to change that. If anything, Tremaine Edmonds affects DeMarco Jackson, or not if anything, he will affect DeMarco Jackson and his playing time. So TJ Edwards should be safe. He's been a full-time player even with Tremaine Edmonds active. So, yep, feel pretty good about him in a good matchup this week. Okay, on to Pittsburgh and Detroit next. So Pittsburgh's defensive line, TJ Watt. Obviously, surprise lung injury during practice that caused him to, get surgery, and he missed last week's game. His status this week is in jeopardy, all of that stuff. So it's not a guarantee that he's going to miss this week. So I still have him in the ranks, but there's at least reason for us to look for viable backup options in place just in case he does miss time. The only problem is, so Nick Herbig has been like our go-to automatic locked-in starter once TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith is out. The problem was that last week, he not only didn't take advantage of a good matchup against Miami, but he was sharing that edge 2 role with Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer actually ended up playing slightly more than Herbig in week 15. So that's my concern with Herbig, because typically when Watt or Highsmith has been out, Herbig has played like 75 to 80% of the snaps, and he's been locked in. That's what we love. With them sharing that role with Jack Sawyer, that's where it takes a little bit of value away from Herbig. I still don't mind him if TJ Watt is out, but there is at least reason to be concerned that he's not a locked-in starter this week against the Lions, who, again, they got some very good offensive linemen there. Jared Goff, right now, he's been really good as far as avoiding sacks, but he's not unsackable, I guess is what we'll call him. All right, Pittsburgh's linebackers, nice matchup here for Patrick Queen if he feels like coming through for us in a big week. And if you have him, the only other thing with the Steelers linebacker, the rotation outside of Queen continues to be really annoying since they went back to Malik Harrison on early downs, Peyton Wilson on passing downs. I know Wilson had a sack last week, and it's at least a good matchup this week, but really Peyton Wilson, just a deep league option because of the playing time. Like, he was only on the field for 42% of snaps last week. So that Steelers coaching staff continues to be absolute haters towards our guy, Peyton Wilson, which is no doubt annoying, but very risky play if you are going to put him in there at 42% of snaps potentially. Pittsburgh's defensive backs, Jalen Ramsey, Kyle Duggar for those non-shallow leagues. They're fine. A decent matchup here for cornerback tackle potential as well, which is really just Joey Porter and Asante Samuel if you're looking to stream out of this game. For Detroit, their defensive line, Hutch came through for us in a big week, a big spot last week, a sack, a pick. He was on kind of a mini cold streak, but hopefully he could keep this momentum going here. It wasn't an easy matchup last week against the Rams, but he definitely came through. The matchup this week and even next week are less intimidating than that Rams matchup, so hopefully he'll deliver 2 more strong performances for us en route to a championship. Just continue to start him. Linebackers, Jack Campbell, locked into lineups, even in poor matchups. He's delivered every week pretty much this year, even in those down matchups. So continue to start him and profit. Alex Anzalone, he's more that fringe starter for those deeper leagues. And then Detroit's defensive back. So obviously there were a lot of questions about Brian Branch, his replacement heading into last week. And for me, that was Avonte Maddox. Maddox did indeed play an every down role in place of Brian Branch. He had a fine day. I still expect him to be a starter since Kirby Joseph suffered a setback as far as his injury goes. So for CB required leagues, especially, Maddox is an option if we need him, because you should have that CB eligibility on most platforms. It's not the best matchup, but like having the safety with a cornerback designation is always nice. So yeah, depends on who your other options are. Maddox might still be the best option. Meanwhile, Eric Hallett also had a big game, but his viability likely depends on Thomas Harper clearing concussion protocol this week, which means that Harper will step back in for Hallett. And to be honest with this matchup as well, like I think I only really want to take a shot on Maddox from this group either way, and only where he has that CB eligibility, which should be most places. All right, we got a few more questions. Sherwood, Singleton, or Bethune? Yeah, we haven't talked about Bethune yet. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but I could tell you which one I have highest this week. It looks like I got Singleton one spot ahead. Yeah, and just barely ahead of all 3 of those guys. So again, Ed, if you're not feeling the Singleton call, then definitely a pivot is perfectly fine, because they're all very close. DeCaster, Burns is in a downfall. What happened? Yeah, I honestly, it's poor sack variance. Like, he started the year hot, was due for some regression as far as sacks goes. It's just, unfortunately, it's gone a few games in a row here. I think it's only 3 games without a sack, so it's not like massive. It's not Rashawn Gary or Carl Granderson levels of downfall from their hot starts. But yeah, Burns definitely still playable. Nothing's really changed with him. He's still very high-end pass rusher, and a better matchup this week against Minnesota. So I think he'll be able to get back on track this week. Wallbang, we got to hope Wilson gets a bigger role next year. Steelers coaches are notorious for trusting veterans. Yep, that's been the thing, right? Like that's been a constant theme with this defense is that they don't trust younger guys. They want to rotate their linebackers quite a bit, even when they don't have the younger guys there. They'll rotate veterans as well. Like they have a very situation-based deployment with their linebackers. So that's been something that we've had to deal with for a few years now. So hopefully Wilson can overcome that at some point. Highsmith or Simmons, Richie Cash. Yeah, I got Jeffrey Simmons this week. Nice matchup. Kansas City's offensive line has been solid, but without Mahomes back there, Gardner Minshew definitely going to be more susceptible to sacks. So I gave the slight edge to Jeffrey Simmons this week. Lujar Eric Hallett is with the Titans now. So, okay, I didn't even notice that. So, yeah, I wasn't going to play him this week, but yeah, I must have got claimed. So there you go. Yeah, so again, it just stays with Avonte Maddox as the Detroit defensive backs, right? That's the only one we're going to trust in this poor matchup as well, and just with some uncertainty as far as playing time goes. All right. Ramsey or Locke, B Mills. I got Locke this week. I really like the matchup for PJ Locke, so that's the one that I would trust. All right, Las Vegas Raiders, Houston Texans. Let's start with Las Vegas's linebackers. Devin White has been unreal this year. He's now second in the entire league in total tackles behind only Jordan Brooks. So new career high for White in total tackles. Now he gets one of the best linebacker tackle matchups of the year against the Texans. So we're obviously starting him. Landon Roberts more just a deep league option. Raiders DBs. So Jeremy Chin, we talked about him letting us down in week 15. I think he only had 3 tackles that week. But I really think, all season he's been a locked-in starter for us. He leads all defensive backs in total tackles with 107 on the year. So in a really nice spot to potentially bounce back to his usual ways against the Texans, who have given up the 7th most tackles per game to the safety position. I don't think we need to panic and pivot away from Jeremy Chin this week in lineups. I think he can definitely deliver for us. And then defensive line for the Raiders, it's Max Crosby only. Texans, the Texans are still the most 6 offensive line heavy team in the league, which is, made things difficult for our pass rushers, but Max Crosby basically never leaving the field has made him a locked-in option. And for the most part, he's delivered. So even in a tougher matchup last week against the Eagles where they were getting blown out, he did not leave the field. Absolute hero type shit for Max Crosby for us IDPers. Came through with a sack. He's been doing it for us. So we're going to salute this absolute IDP legend, start him again. Houston's defensive line, we'll start here because I have a sneaky suspicion that Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter might have a good game this week. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, the awful Raiders offensive line. Maybe it's Bonnie and Spirit, Kenny Pickett at quarterback, and is 28% pressure to sack conversion rate. Maybe it's the fact that Anderson and Hunter both own top 7 pass rush grades for their position on the year. Maybe it's the fact that I'm facing Will Anderson in 2 crucial semifinal matchups this week. So I'd say if there's any player that I want to bet on 2+ sacks on this week's probably Will Anderson first, Danielle Hunter second, aside from Myles Garrett, right? They're just going to continue to destroy the Raiders. And if you have them, enjoy. If you're facing them, then, well, Godspeed, because it could get ugly this week. Houston's linebackers, we have 2 full-time linebackers now for the Texans, Azeez Al-Shaair, Henry To'o. So bad matchup for both, which is too bad because they're both at least startable in non-shallow leagues. But if you don't have other full-time options, they're good. Houston's defensive backs, it's Jalen Petrie and Kamari Lassiter for me this week. Those are the 2 basically to consider. Petrie has been solid, and Lassiter has been a strong cornerback streaming option when the matchup lines up, and the matchup is at least above average this week. So both of those guys can be playable. All right. Holy Guacamole has a question. Derwin James, Trayvon Merrick, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Jones, Cole Bishop, pick 2. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I know, is up there for me, and I probably have Derwin as... No, I think I have Merrick. Yeah, I got Merrick as Cole Bishop. Sorry, man. Oh, my God. You got some good options there. That's why. Okay, yeah, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Cole Bishop for me as the starters there. Stewart, D. Alford, CJ Gardner-Johnson, both available on free agent. Open spots to add them. Do I move Aziz or Geno or Kingleton to the bench? I have CJ Gardner-Johnson over Geno Stone this week, so that's probably the play there. And then I'd leave the 2 linebackers in for potentially better tackling. Trenton G, which 2 linebackers of Devin White, Zach Bond, Sherwood, Henley, Wagner, Reich, Willia? I don't know who that is. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Devin White is in for me, and I think Zach Bond is the other one. Yeah. Devin White and Zach Bond. Ernest Jones or Nick Benito or Jeffrey Simmons, pick 2. Jim Bob. Yeah, again, scoring probably matters with this one because if it's a tackle heavy league, then Ernest Jones is going to get one of those spots. If all things are equal, though, I might take 2 upside shots on Nick Benito and Jeffrey Simmons. So yeah, I'll say Benito and Simmons this week because we know the Ernest Jones matchup isn't great, but we could get some nice sack production from Benito and Simmons as per usual. The very sexy muffin. Last question. Struggling with Demario Davis versus Jamie and Sherwood. Leading Demario based on the tackle matchup. I think that's fine. They're both very close for me this week. Demario Davis and Sherwood. Very close. Like, yeah, I gave the edge to Sherwood. But like if you want to trust the matchup, I am completely fine with that. These guys, a lot of these full-time linebackers are so close, and using the tackle matchups as tiebreakers definitely helps. So Demario Davis can definitely be an option for you this week. All right. Alfredo, Nicholas, Effendi, sorry, might missed if you already answered it, but would you start Malachi Moore over Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this week? Really like more usage and matchup this week. Gardner-Johnson has been awesome in Chicago. Yeah, you're right. On both counts. Both players are awesome. I do have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson ahead, but again, like we just said with the Sherwood versus Demario Davis thing, the matchup is better for Malachi Moore. The usage has been really solid. So, I'd be fine pivoting. Trust your gut, right? Like that's the main thing here. And both of those guys are great. I don't think there's a bad answer in there. So if you want to go Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I would say that works perfectly fine. Okay. Jalix Hunt or Nolan Smith in Dynasty. Good question. I'd have to check my dynasty ranks. I have them very close because the usage has been very close. Production and pass rush metrics have been close-ish. So I'm going to say Nolan Smith with a slight edge just because of the draft capital, but that could change at the end of the year once I run through all the numbers. So don't hold me to that one, Lucas or Luca. Yeah, it's close. I'll say Nolan Smith for now, but Jalix Hunt for this year. All right. One more, and then we'll move on to the next game. Daryl asks, which 2, Verse, Burns, or Hines Allen? So this week, Verse, Burns, Hines Allen. So I got Burns and I got Hines Allen. So Hines Allen and Verse are super close because both of them don't have great pass rush matchups. So that one, more of a coin flip, but I do like Brian Burns' chances of delivering this week. So he'd be in there for sure. And then slight edge to Hines Allen, but I'm fine pivoting to Verse, especially with Charles Cross out. Yeah. That's tight. I would maybe say Verse. Okay. Yeah, it's a coin flip, as you can see, as I struggle with it. But I do have Hines Allen a little bit higher right now. Okay, let's go to Sunday Night Football. We're almost there. New England Patriots, Baltimore Ravens. Oh my God, almost 2 hours. Yeah, I had a feeling this was going to go longer, but here we are. Sunday Night Football, New England. We have to start with this freaking linebacker situation. They screwed over a ton of people by making Robert Spillane active and then not playing him. He was apparently only active for emergency purposes, according to Mike Vrabel. This is a jailable offense, in my opinion, especially in the fantasy playoffs, because, yeah, it was a big game for the Patriots against the Bills. So not playing their LB1, little bit concerning. That the injury may be more of a concern going forward. We'll see. The team also claimed Chad Muma off the Colts practice squad. Actually, the second practice squad linebacker claimed off the Colts this week with Anthony Walker. But so with them claiming another linebacker, maybe creates a little bit more speculation that Spillane might not be fully healthy. Jelani Tavai also missed last game with a personal matter, so he could mix in there as well. I think this is a situation that we'll want to keep an eye on. We'll see what the practice reports are for Spillane Thursday, Friday. I think that's going to be the key. I think we want 2 full practices in a row with Spillane to trust him, because we can't have that happen again. Obviously, I can't imagine that they'd make him a emergency linebacker again if he's not good to go, just because Tavai should be back, as well as claiming Chad Muma. So they have a little bit more options there. We should at least get a more clear situation. So if Spillane isn't good to go, then Jack Gibbons does become more valuable. He'll probably move up the ranks quite a bit for me. Although again, Jelani Tavai also a candidate to play in there. So these guys aren't going to be high-end options for me in a below average matchup. Christian Ellis would also get a value boost. It's gross, guys. Like the Patriots screwed us last week with this, and I don't think they're a team that necessarily has earned our trust as far as what to expect from their linebacker deployment. They've been a heavy rotation group this season. So if you can avoid them, I would. I wouldn't be surprised if Spillane is just flat out inactive this week, just based on some of their moves. But it's been a tough one to trust. New England's defensive back. So Marcus Jones had a really nice week last week. We talked about a great matchup for him and liking him as his IDP potential this past week, and he delivered. This week, unfortunately, Marcus Jones gets one of the worst matchups, especially for nickel corners, against the Ravens. The Ravens are giving up the fewest tackles per game to the cornerback position on the year, and they spend the lowest rate of snaps in 11 personnel. So Jones's snap shares in danger here. He'll probably get a little bit time against the Ravens tight ends, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, but I don't expect him to be a 100% snap player. Obviously, if you're getting him in kick return leagues, that definitely helps boost up some of that value. But straight up CB required leagues, Marcus Jones, I would be having on the lower end of CB required options this week. So suboptimal matchup to trust Marcus Jones at this point in the season. Patriots defensive line, Harold Landry, and decent matchup here for them, with Lamar Jackson taking more sacks than average. The struggles of that offensive line as well. Not that Harold Landry is like an elite pass rusher to be like a locked-in option, but he's usable for sure. Kayvon Chason less so than him, and then Christian Barmore, more of a fine DT2 required option this week in DT required leagues. Baltimore, their linebackers. So Teddy Buchanan, we lost to a torn ACL last week, so that moved Trenton Simpson back into that LB2 role. Now we know Simpson isn't going to be an every down player. Even Teddy Buchanan wasn't an every down player, so I think it'll be less so here with the Simp. So just a very deep league option is Trenton Simpson if you're desperate in a neutral matchup. Obviously, Roquan Smith is good to go. Baltimore's defensive backs, Kyle Hamilton and company get a poor matchup this week. Unfortunately, it's been a tough run for Hamilton as of late with matchups, and he hasn't exactly thrived in them. So I'm not expecting too much from him this week, unfortunately. Obviously, Alohi Gilman, like he delivered last week, but that was because of the touchdown, which isn't repeatable. So none of these guys are necessarily locked in IDP starters. I have Hamilton as more of a DB2 this week. And then Baltimore's defensive line, we know it's just hoping that volume will breed production from this group. Draymond Jones, Mike Green, Travis Jones, Kyle Van Noy, like not great options, but odds are somebody is going to take down Drake May this week. It just becomes about hoping for good RNG, and it's the one that you put in your lineup who gets home. And I just don't love that strat in the fantasy playoffs. So just be careful there. Dr. Dave, bring out the Simp. He's sleeping right now. I'll go wake him up. Yes, we love Trenton Simpson. Not so much. The Gimp, obviously, in Pulp Fiction, we love. All right. We'll go on to the last game here, but quickly, let's see if I have any other questions. Hoff50, I still don't know how to say your name, but I wasn't able to be here at 10. Wish I didn't have a job. I think we see Demonwari go off tonight. I got him as DB1 this week, and don't feel bad about missing the start time. That is not a big deal. I understand everybody's got different things to do. We could always catch the VOD later, but you got him and Byron Young playing tonight along with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Nice. Love those options. I think you got some strong ones there for sure. Also asked, did I beat Legend of Dragoon? Yes, I have beat Legend of Dragoon. It was a lot of fun. Honestly, it's up there. It was excellent. I think there's a few things, the random encounter rates in that game were insanely high, which became more of a struggle at the end, probably more so than the final boss fight. But that's a minor gripe. And then, That the only holding 32 items was annoying as well, but I definitely get it because potions are pretty powerful in that game. So it did make sense. But yeah, it was fantastic. Those were literally the only two things that I wasn't crazy about. Otherwise, Legend of Dragoon, absolute, yeah. Understand why that is considered one of the top PS1 classics. It's been amazing. And yeah, if you get into Expedition 33, you're gonna love it. There's a lot of influence from games like that in that era. Game of the year. It won Game of the Year, and deservedly so. Expedition 33 is amazing. Even if you aren't like a JRPG lover, I think everybody should play Clear Obscure Expedition 33 just for the story alone. Play it on easy mode if you have to. All right. Monday Night Football, last game of the week. Let's do it. San Francisco, Indianapolis. San Francisco's linebackers. It seems like Tatum Bethune has a good shot to return this week. He's at least going to practice. So if he's back, then he'll be our top San Francisco linebacker to target, assuming he regains his role. Curtis Robinson will then be droppable. If Bethune isn't available to go, then we could go back to Robinson. It doesn't seem like Eric Kendricks is going to get out there. I think he got banged up as well in practice. So odds are we don't have to worry about him. D Winters, very low end option this week in a poor matchup, just continues to be incredibly ineffective in a full-time role. San Francisco's DBs, really nice matchup for Malik Mustafa, Jair Brown on paper. Now, the only thing here with the Colts, in their first game with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, they only yielded 11 safety tackles, which is well below their usual average of 14.8. So at least a slight concern. Neither of those guys is like a must-start option or an avoid or anything like that. They're both solid, but just keep that in mind that the safety numbers there are probably going to go down if we see that trend with Phillip Rivers at quarterback continue. Yeah, but they've been solid. Like I said, this year, they're just something to keep in mind as quarterback changes happen. The offense, the tackles, sacks, the yields can also change as well. San Francisco's defensive line. I mean, considering that Bryce Huff and company weren't able to get a single sack against the Tennessee Titans of all team last week, I think we'll be able to live with just avoiding the 49ers defensive line this week in a tough matchup with a great Colts offensive line and Rivers, who was at least decent at avoiding sacks. He took just one sack last week. So, and shout out Emanwari for being the guy to get that one. Okay. Indianapolis linebackers, we'll start there with this team, and Zaire Franklin actually gets his highest ranking in a while, as he's been much more effective for IDP lately, delivering double-digit tackles in 4 of his last 5 games. He obviously didn't hit that mark at all in every game prior. So Franklin does get a good matchup this week for linebacker tackle potential against the 49ers, tied for the second most tackles per game to the linebacker position this season. I don't mind Zaire Franklin. It's a risky game to play because he's been shit for us so much this year, but him and Jermaine Pratt should get plenty of opportunities to rack up tackles here against a run-heavy 49ers offense. Pratt going to come off the field a little bit more, which is the only thing that basically keeps him in that more of the LB3 range for me this week, but it's still a strong option. And Zaire Franklin actually in LB2 this week. Indianapolis's defensive line. So DeForest Buckner was designated to return last week. He wasn't active, obviously, for the game, but a better chance that he'll return this week, which is why he's even in the rankings this week. So doesn't get the easiest pass rush matchup. Brock Purdy has been the best quarterback in the league in terms of pressure to sack conversion rate. But yeah, for the thing that helps really is that the 49ers are yielding the most tackles per game to defensive linemen this season. So should be a nice production floor at the very least for DeForest Buckner if he is back this week. Colts play on Monday night, so ideally we'll get news of Buckner's return prior to Sunday. But if not, IDP managers, we need to make sure we have some pivot or replacement options there just in case we're waiting for the last second. And then Latu, he picked up a sack last week in a tougher matchup as well. Things get tougher this week, basically, with Purdy at quarterback. So Latu has surprisingly overcome difficult matchups before. He's also done nothing in great matchups. So he's been a little bit harder to trust. He'll just be kind of a fringe starter for us this week. And then Indianapolis defensive backs, Nick Cross, Cam Bynum, good to go in a great matchup. Cross is locked in for sure in our lineups over basically anybody other than Nick Emanwari, I think. And then Bynum can be a viable streamer if you need him. But that's it, man. That's 32 teams, 16 games, over 2 hours. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll answer a few more questions here to close it out, just to make sure that we don't miss anybody. Because, yeah, there were a lot, and I do appreciate that anybody that came in asked questions. If I did miss anything, go to the VOD when it's on YouTube and just put a question in the comments, copy and paste the question that I missed, put it in the comments. I will answer it there before the day is done, before the games kick off today, and then throughout the week as well. So Holy Guacamole has Roquan, Gray, Brooks, Landman, Bolton, Cashman, Byron. Pick one. Yeah. Man, you got some options there. Yeah, I think it's White. You have White in the other slot. Okay. It's Cashman for me. I think as the best linebacker option for me this week in a great matchup. Blake Cashman, Blake Cashman and Devin White, excellent options. Landman is really close. Roquan obviously close. Oh my God, man. That's you're stacked there at linebacker. You need to basically convince your league that you guys need to start more than one linebacker. Basically more than one linebacker, because you could take advantage of that for sure. Jeffrey Simmons or Highsmith from GK Verbal. I got Simmons this week. It's one spot ahead, so it's very close, but I do like Simmons's matchup. Ed Khalil, is Alex Wright a good play this week? Yeah, we didn't talk about him when talking about the Browns. It is, the Bills' offensive line has been tougher. Josh Allen has been sackable, but he's not perfect in that regard. I would probably look elsewhere. I don't necessarily trust Alex Wright in a matchup like this. He's not necessarily Myles Garrett, obviously, to overcome a slightly tougher matchup, but Alex Wright, a fine volume option in deep leagues, but it's going to depend on who your other options are. It's supposed to be half witty, like half wit. Okay, there we go. I could see it now. I was not seeing it before. I was basically in my head was referring to as Hofty. That's how I was reading it. Again, guys, I am illiterate. So half witty, that works. Tyler Softcheck live show. Love this. Love John. Thank you, Tyler. Love you as well. Tyler, our great producer over here. One of our great producers here at PFF, in charge of all of our great video content. Jiff looking to play for a higher ceiling this week, more tackle-oriented league. So out of these guys, which three would you start? Okereke, Tyke, CJ, I'm assuming Gardner Johnson. I'm assuming that's Jeffrey Simmons, and then Foye Oluokun. So tackle heavy league. Foye, Simmons, and Gardner Johnson for me. Those are the three that I would go with. Tyke is really close with Gardner Johnson. Again, I think that one could go either way. I'm fine going Tyke. Okereke, he's been less reliable, so he's the lowest of the group for me. Scott White, good show. When do you go on again? This is the last. This is the only live show that we've done this season. We won't be able to do it next week because it's the Christmas week. So next week will be our final IDP start sit show. Again, sorry to you week 18 degens, just not doing the week 18 stuff, but week 17, that'll be our next one. And I'm going to try to get it out earlier. We'll see what things look like, but I'm going to try. And then obviously depends on our great producers here as well, what they're able to get to, but going to try to get it out as early as possible, a little earlier than usual next week to get ahead of the Christmas schedule. But we'll be back next week, probably Tuesday, Wednesday. Alfredo seems likely to miss Gray this week. Would you double up Pratt and Franklin this week with the matchup, or would you go Franklin and Caden Ellis or TJ Edwards? Good question. I don't hate the idea of doubling up at linebacker sometimes in great matchups, but I do have those full-time guys ahead of Jermaine Pratt. So this week I have TJ Edwards ahead. TJ Edwards gets a great matchup, full-time linebacker. So he and Zaire Franklin would be the plays for me this week. Thanks for your time. No, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Ed Khalil, really appreciate the $5 super chat. Very, very generous of you. Happy holidays to you as well. That is much appreciated. PJ Locke, Malik Mustafa, Amani Hooker, or Nick Scott at safety. So I have PJ Locke. I'm going to take a shot on him this week. I really, really like the matchup. I like I think the usage is good enough for the Denver safeties. It's not like high-end box usage from that group, but that group as a whole has been productive. So I don't mind taking a shot on PJ Locke this week. Again, we talked about Malik Mustafa, a little bit of concern with Phillip Rivers, Nick Scott, basically completely deep safety. Amani Hooker, I really have just a hard time trusting him. So I'm going to lean PJ Locke this week and hope he delivers for us. So good luck there. Eduardo Canales, Edge Cooper, or Bobby Wagner, tackle heavy league. I know I have Edgerrin Cooper this week in a much better matchup. Bobby Wagner, unfortunately, gets the worst tackle matchup for linebackers this year, with the Eagles yielding the fewest tackles per game. Joe House, appreciate all your hard work. Love IDP. Glad there are people like you out there supporting the format. Joe, very, very kind words of you. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for the support more than anything. And I'm happy to help and lucky to be able to do this. So thank you very much for the kind words. Dyer, IDP Keeper League for next year. Pick 2 between Emanwari, Hutchinson, Roquan, Branch. Yeah, so Aiden Hutchinson for sure is going to be a keeper for me. I think he could be even better, another year removed from that injury. So he's definitely a keeper. Branch, I'm fine letting go just because of the injury. Roquan and Emanwari is close. So I think, honestly, I probably am going to go with, I'm going to go Emanwari. No, damn it. I'm going to go Roquan. DB, the thing with DB is that it is a more streamable position. The production year to year is more volatile, and linebacker is disgusting every year, right? So if you know you're going to get a locked in LB1, I'm fine just holding him. There's no concern about Roquan losing his job or his production, dropping off significantly, where that is more of a concern with DBs. I have that less of a concern with Emanwari. So it's close between those two. I'll probably say Roquan and Hutch. Cashman or Pratt for Med Khalil. I got Blake Cashman this week. Great matchup for him. Goffer, we're not going to do the offense questions. A few more of those have rolled in here. This is the IDP crowd only this week. And then Mufadalud Tube. Tough name to pronounce. I don't want to butcher it, so I'll just try once there. Hufanga or Emanwari. It's super tight. I went with Emanwari this week. Hufanga has an amazing matchup as well. Both of those guys do. So yeah, I'm going to go with Emanwari this week. Toronto Sharks, which I know is Mr. Bradley Deuce. Great job all year. Appreciate you. Great, best IDP mind in the industry. Love the interactive format. Looking forward to next year already. Appreciate you, Brad. Good luck this week. Likely going to beat me, but that's okay. Losing to a great guy, and that's okay with me. All right, Chris Tomasin. Also, I need some hope for round 2 of the playoffs. 8 seed took out the 1 seed last week. Love that. Nice job. I have the 2 seed this week. So he's Devontae Adams and Drake London at wide receiver. Who do you think London? Oh, this was an offense question. Okay. Do you think London play? I feel like Drake London's going to play. I'll check the practice reports today once they come in, but at least we'll have that information. Today will be the best indication of that. So don't worry that you didn't notice that it was IDP. I didn't notice that your question was offense till I got halfway through it. So don't feel bad. Holy guacamole. Thanks for all the help this year, and have a great Christmas. Thank you as well. Hope you have a great Christmas. Really do appreciate you guys being so supportive all season long, but I think that's going to do it. Oh, wait, almost. We got a couple more just popping in. Hufanga, Hamilton, or pickups, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, pick 2. So I got Hufanga and I got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the ranks this week. I don't mind keeping Hamilton in there if you don't want to make the change or lose him for next week, anything like that. So it's close enough that I could be fine with it. But in the rankings this week, I do have Hufanga and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. All right, Jay Stiz starting Dodson and Bond, LB1 and 2. Tyke Smith in the DB spot. Should I start Emanwari or Ernest Jones at IDP flex spot? 2 points for tackle. So yeah, I'm gonna go Emanwari. I just love the production that he's able to do. He's got some big play potential as far as just his utilization goes as a pass rusher and getting after the quarterback. He's been able to deliver on that. So for that reason, I like him. And the linebacker tackle matchup for Ernest Jones isn't great, where the DB tackle matchup, both at safety and cornerback, where Emanwari is playing, is great. So that's going to be my guy. I know we've been glazing Emanwari all show. It puts him at risk this week that he could have a down week, but I feel like he's been so good that I can't go away from him at this point. Oluokun versus Denver. Where do I have him ranked? I got Foye LB19 this week. So LB2. He's an LB2 spot. Definitely playable. Should be perfectly fine. And then thank you. That's it. The other question is offense. So that is going to do it, guys. I appreciate you all for the support all season long. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Okay, hold on. We got one more. Eduardo Canales. Sorry. Herbig, Chop Robinson, Rashawn Gary, or Trayvon Walker. That is going to be tight. I think, okay, we don't know if TJ Watt is out yet. And then we did talk a little bit about Herbig's usage in that game. So that's the only concern I have. But I would like him over Chop. I'd like him over Rashawn Gary. And Trayvon Walker also doesn't get playing time, or it doesn't get a good matchup. So I'm going to go Herbig, assuming Watt is out. If Watt is not out, probably Chop Robinson because of the matchup. And I think he'll get good playing time as well with the team moving on from Judon. So those are my options. Oh, and favorite Final Fantasy 7. I know it's the the default answer for a lot of people, but I really do believe that Final Fantasy 7 is the perfect game from top to bottom. So I character-wise, all the party members, the materia system, the story, villain, obviously, with Sephiroth, everything about Final Fantasy 7 is perfect. It's close for me. I think 10 is up there. 6 is absolutely up there. I love 9, also up there. Those are kind of like the elite 4 for me. Yeah, none of the modern stuff as much, but old school Final Fantasy for sure. 7. I'd probably put them 7, 10, and 9 and 6 are a tie for me. Yeah. All right. Steve Laughlin, Zach Bond, TJ Edwards, Foye Lucan need 2 linebackers. I got Zach Bond and TJ Edwards this week. Good luck, sir. Just Farrell at defensive end. No, not really. I really don't. I struggle with that group as a whole. So Winfield or Bishop, TJ Edwards, Singleton, Bolton, Demario Davis, pick 3. Okay. The end of the stream has created a lot of questions. So let's see, Winfield or Bishop. I've got Bishop this week. I like him. It's really close though. Winfield is right there as well. Kind of a toss up, but I did give a slight edge to Bishop, TJ Edwards, Singleton, Bolton, Demario Davis. 3. Yep, those first 3 are the ones for me. Demario's probably the odd man out. So Edwards, Singleton, Bolton. Cheers. Merry Christmas to you as well, Bruce Warren. I appreciate you. Thank you. Marks and Parkinson. We don't have to go with that one. Lost Minka this week. Pick 2 DBs. Locke, Will Harris, Zane Anderson, or Kendrell Brooks. Oh, man. I think it's going to be PJ Locke. I would be okay taking a shot on Brooks just because the matchup was decent, but yeah, it's close. Will Harris hasn't been playing a full-time role. Zane Anderson, I still don't know how much I trust him because they do have Javon Bullard, even though they haven't really been using him as a safety. That's my only concern there. So might go Locke and Kendall Brooks. Thoughts on waiting for Bethune to play Monday Night Football? It's risky. But if you are going to do that, just make sure you have Curtis Robinson as a potential pivot option. So that's the only advice I would do there. Just make sure you have that pivot or D Winters, but Curtis Robinson probably more widely available. Yeah, can't seem to trust Henley. I know. I hear you. He's been mid. Need to sit 1 DB, Tycho, Adebo, or Bates. So I would probably sit Jesse Bates this week. Bad matchup for him against the Cardinals. And Paulson Adebo has been amazing as far as cornerback tackle efficiency goes. And then Tyke, obviously, he's been an absolute baller. So that's it. We'll see. We've had a few false starts here to the end, but we'll see if any more questions come in. If they do, just throw them in the VOD if I miss them. But that's going to wrap us up for this week. Again, I can't say enough good things about you guys as the IDP community as a whole. You guys, especially, like, without your support, I mean, I'd be dead in a ditch somewhere. Or no, nothing that dramatic. But I literally couldn't do this show if you guys weren't as supportive as you have been. So just truly a massive thank you to you all. Best of luck in round 2 of the fantasy playoffs. And I hope you all win. Next week, we'll try to do it again. And we'll get the episode out, like I said, as early as possible. It's Christmas. Again, it messes with my schedule a fair bit, the week 17 falling on the Christmas week, but I'm definitely going to get an episode out there so we could hopefully finish the year with the championship. I appreciate you too, Half Witty. IDP Fantasy Degenerate. Look forward to these more than the offensive content. I appreciate you. Bittersweet. The season's coming to an end, but you know what? Hopefully it ends in a championship and we can all go home happy. But again, appreciate you guys riding all season long. We will see you next week. Good luck to everyone. And until next time, peace out.